Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this June meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Tampa TPO, now as it's now known. I'd like to call this meeting to order. As I mentioned a moment ago, we are still not quite at full quorum strength, so we will do the things in this meeting that we can do without a quorum until we have an extra person join us.
Quorum just walked in.
She's in.
Very good. Very good.
Interesting.
All right. So we have a seventh person here in the room. Good morning. So I would like to do the introductions, and if I could ask Cheryl or her designee to call the roll. And we have a new member with us this morning. I'd like her to introduce herself when her name is called and tell us a little bit about herself. Cheryl, are you up?
Actually, it's Gail.
Gail.
Go ahead, Gail. Thank you.
All right, David Bailey. Carolyn Brown. Hoyt Prindle.
Here.
Vivian Handy. Steve Hollenkamp.
Here.
Nicole Rice. Alexis Bobak.
Here.
Christina Costa.
Here.
And for our new member, can you please pronounce your first name for me?
Aya Yasin. Aya Yasin.
Aya Yassine.
And I am present.
And would you like to do your introduction?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Aya Yasin. I'm AICP certified. I am an urban and regional planner. Right now I work with American Structure Point. And I've worked with Hillsborough County and the Florida Department of Transportation. And I represent the city of Temple Terrace.
Welcome to our committee. Yeah. All
Artie
right.
Fryer or Nancy Castellano? Bill Roberts.
Present.
Nicholas Glover. Don Skelton Jr.
Action here.
Jeff Lucas. Beatrice Zafra.
Here.
Cliff Rice.
I'm here.
Sharon Gamond.
Hi.
Rick Fernandez.
Here.
Terrence Trott.
I'm here. Good morning.
Rick Richmond.
Here.
Amy Espinoza. And Barbara Kennedy Gibson.
Here.
All right. Very good. Welcome all. I see 7 members present in the room, so I'll declare that we have a quorum. The next item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone signed up or wishing to make public comment at this time?
I don't see anybody signed up.
Okay, there is no one. There's no one in the room and there is no one signed up. So we will close the public comment portion of the meeting and move on to the members' interests. Cliff, I think you had something you wanted to bring up. Yes.
If I could just interrupt for a moment.
Yes, Rich.
Chairman, I see Carolyn Brown has signed in on the chat. So I don't know if she was called or not, but she is present.
Okay. We'll show Carolyn as present in the chat then. Members' interest. Cliff Reese, did you have something you wanted to bring to the committee?
Yes, I do. Can my screen be shared?
Michael, can you make Cliff Reese the presenter?
Show my screen.
There you go.
Happy seen, okay. There was an article in the New York Times late last month. The title of the article is Highways Destroyed Cities, Now Some Are Removing Them. The article presented pictures of 16 cities: Rochester, New York, Atlanta, Oakland, California, Boston, Dallas, Austin, Texas, Kansas City, etc., with before pictures that were taken between 1938 and 1969. You see a sample of that on the screen. And then after pictures taken between 2010 and 21, showing highways that were built that divided parts of the city and may have disproportionately impacted underserved neighborhoods. I know it's a little difficult to do the before and after with this, but it does show the differences between the two of them. The article then discussed in detail a highway in Rochester, New York, the Rochester Inner Loop, and I had that here someplace. Hang on. There it is. Okay, let me back up. Back to the first part, there are a couple of pictures they showed of neighborhoods before and after. This one's Detroit's Black Bottom neighborhood, where a black community was demolished to make way for Interstate 375, and now they're removing the highway. And the second one was New Orleans Claiborne Avenue, the Claiborne Expressway having removed a boulevard. The article then discusses in detail Rochester's Inner Loop. And this picture shows the section of the former Inner Loop East that was removed. It was a sunken highway that divided downtown from the rest of the city and destroyed hundreds of homes and businesses when it was built. The replacement of that section of the highway is identified as a success and a demonstration of what can be done. That shows the Inner Loop. This is the before picture. Sunken highway with access roads on either side. Again, another picture of the highway before in 14, 6 lanes with access roads. As they were filling in the inner loop, the title says dump trucks hauled thousands of tons of dirt to fill it in. And if you actually look at this section here, these are apartment buildings that were built on top of what used to be the roadway. Another after picture of some of the construction that's going on, and a picture of the finished product. The article lists 4 highways in Detroit, Michigan, New Haven, Connecticut, Somerville, Massachusetts, and Syracuse, New York that have been committed to removal. And that's difficult to, I can't expand it any further. Shows these 4 highways here. 6 more in other locations where there is an official study, and 18 additional locations where plans been proposed by local groups, and Interstate 275 is one of those. These are listed, the 18, and I don't know why they picked this particular picture of Interstate 275, but we're on the list there. To continue, the article provides some important context that can't be ignored when you discuss the future of highways. Yes, something has to be done. Highways built in the mid-20th century are reaching the end of their lifespan, and cities do have a choice: rebuild or reconsider what to do with the highway. The good news, as stated in the article, a decade ago, every transportation problem was solved with new roads. Now, consistent with the kind of discussions we're having, the broader impact of constructing these roads is being considered. There's a new issue, however, that the article does highlight. What replaces the highway after it's removed is a concern. There's a different type of displacement that can occur if gentrification takes place and existing residents are pushed out as properties along these former highways become more valuable, or, as happened in Rochester, if apartment buildings are constructed where the highway once was, these apartments form a different kind of wall. So the last point, when you look at Rochester, the inner loop was underutilized. There was little downside to removing it. However, 5 of the highways listed in this removal plan proposal, I've actually am personally familiar with and I've driven on them. And unlike the underutilized Rochester inner loop, each of these highways have bumper to bumper traffic during peak travel times. So any proposed solution, especially in Tampa, can't ignore the reality of what do we do with the cars on the road today and those that are coming in the future, given that unconstrained development continues to bring more new residents and cars to our area. It's an interesting article. There were over 700 comments posted on the New York Times website, mentioning many of the topics, and points that I just went through. Any questions?
Thank you, Cliff. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Mr. Skelton.
I just want to know, could you possibly share a link to that article? I think it's pretty interesting. I'd like to read it myself.
Okay, I sent Rich a link. I'm not sure whether you need subscription or not. I'll also try to send an email link that can be pushed out once Rich gets it. So we'll do.
Yes, Aya?
Okay.
I wanted to, of course, read the article myself as well, but did the article mention how the removal process has taken place in terms of who's going to fund it, what type of studies were conducted to justify or explain where the traffic is going to go with the removal and then demolition of those roads, so we can maybe understand how did that happen? Like how did they make it happen?
No, the article didn't go into that, other than the fact that the inner loop in Rochester that was removed was underutilized.
Thank you. Nikki, do you have a question?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Cliff, thanks for sharing that. It actually correlates with a presentation that if you'd like, I could post or share of a presentation that we just did for our caucus with Josh Franks that explains the history of that, including also the Embarcadero, including other major areas where this has happened, and explains the cost and the amount of money and impact that can have in raising revenues for cities and counties. It is far cheaper to demolish something always, just like it's always fun to break something down, right? When you get a job done in your house, they're real quick at knocking things down. It always takes longer to put it back together. But the cost is far greater to continue to build these interstates than it is to invest in local arterial ways. And I'd also like to comment, one of the questions that Cliff proposed was, what do you do with that traffic? And when you look at bringing it down to ground level with the Boulevard project, which is the one that's being highlighted in this article, that is actually something that we've talked about funding here that should be a priority. That project is completely available for you to see. And I'm happy to share that information with everyone here.
Thank you, Nicole. I think that would be of interest to the committee. Certainly the Boulevard project is continuing to be discussed at this committee, and it's on the TIP in some form. Sharon, did you have a comment?
Well, this might be stupid, but how do you remove a highway?
Well, if it's a trenched highway, you fill it in with dirt, as they did in Rochester with thousands of trucks loads of it. If it's elevated, you knock it down.
I mean, and that's something that is actually a possibility when we're talking about 275.
Yep.
It is
Absolutely.
it is a subject of discussion, not just
Okay.
at this committee, but other places as well. Yes.
Okay.
Christine, you're recognized.
Thank you. I really appreciate these images and the review of this article. I have not read it word for word. However, it's a perfect dovetail to what I would like to contribute in our member discussion, which is I had this committee had committed to learning a little bit more about something called transportation demand management. So transportation demand management is what can be utilized to answer the question, what do we do with all these cars if we advance the boulevard concept for 275. So I look forward to putting that on our agenda, but just to give just a thimbleful of what that is, transportation demand management is a set of principles and techniques that are used to focus on the movement of people instead of the movement of cars. And it's done by pairing land use and the built environment with behavior modification incentives and well-established methods. Just one example of that might be a new development that, say, is residential. And so in the lobby of a residential condominium or apartment tower, the staff there is well versed on every single modal option. There's a live kiosk that is on a big screen, and it conveys to all passersby what transit, what mobility options are available. Say there are 6 electric bikes on the block, there are scooters, there's car share, there's the next bus, there's the BRT, there's a water taxi. All these things are presented real time to everyone who is in that space, so that we can break the cycle of, I got to get groceries, where are my car keys? So I just say that as a dovetail to what we've just seen, and also to reiterate my interest that we bring transportation demand management as a topic to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. That suggestion is noted, and I'll get with the staff and Rich and see if we can bring that as a topic to a future meeting. Nicole, did you have a further comment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just forwarded the presentation on the Boulevard project to Cheryl and to Rich. That attachment should be on it. And one thing to consider when we speak about 275, the reason that it's showing that portion, Cliff, that you refer to, like when you're like, why was it that portion, is the portion that creates the problem that we have, which we consistently have, is the bottleneck going in, which we'll be discussing today with some of the proposals on the tip.
Right.
It takes out the bottleneck. So that portion that goes from basically MLK, that downtown portion, to Bears, is the portion that you're seeing in that article. And by bringing that to ground level, you get rid of that problem that if you grew up here, you've been here a long time, we've all known as Malfunction Junction. And that is actually a locally traveled road. Most people are using it from USF to downtown. Almost 70% of it's local trips, because you get on your GPS and it goes, go to 275. I'm like, hey, I live off Sly. Why do I need to get on 275 to go to MLK? That's ridiculous. I have 2 arterial and multiple other modes to get there, creating traffic. So please, I wish that this could have been shared earlier, because as a citizen committee, we are the only voice to kind of check where this money goes. So I did share it, and if Rich, if you could make sure that has the attachment, so that we can share it with everybody. And it will answer a lot of questions regarding that.
Thank you, Nicole. Aya, did you have a comment?
Maybe I'll let Richard go first. I think I wanted to make a recommendation in how we can move forward with this.
Okay.
Well, we're still in member interest, aren't we?
We're still in member interest. This is a place where we can recommend or ask for topics to be brought to future meetings. So if you have a suggestion along those lines, to be more than welcome.
Yes.
So this would be a good. Go ahead.
So I recommend that we can maybe ask the MPO, the TPO, to do a study, and I'm sure if there isn't a study already, sorry, I'm new. But if there isn't a specific study that actually studies the removal of that segment, what is the logical termini of the removal or demolition and turning it into boulevard, and what the impacts will be, and the recommendation of how it can be funded and how we can move it along, I would like to recommend that we move forward that way. I think it's, I'm not sure, so I don't know if it's a good or a bad idea. I don't want to be biased, although I'm a transportation planner. But I think that having a technical study will make this a lot clearer for us.
Okay, thank you. And that recommendation will be so noted, and we'll bring it back to a future meeting. Mr. Fernandez is recognized.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure he has the answer.
First of all, if I could do it in a politically correct way, I would get up and I would hug both our new member and Cliff for their presentations and the recommendation. One of the nice things about this committee is we have people rotate in and out on a fairly regular basis. So the recommendation just made dovetails nicely with the recommendation that actually came out of this committee and was voted on by a supermajority and then approved by the MPO in 2019 to do a study on this very thing. Now, it's been sitting in limbo for 2 years, but nonetheless, to have a refresher, if you will, to the MPO board at this point, 2 years on, would be very helpful. So thank you for that recommendation, and thanks for picking up on the need. And Cliff, thank you for picking up the baton on the New York Times article. I appreciate it very much. If I may, Chair, I had a number here, but I'd like one member interest comment, if I may.
Member interest items are appropriate. Yeah.
Thank you. Hopefully all of you saw an email. I think initially one came out from Cheryl yesterday, and I believe Rich sent out a duplicate this morning from me, or forwarding information from me about a home on Francis Avenue in Tampa Heights, directly across the street from our community garden. For those of you that are familiar with the Tampa Heights community, the garden is really the heart and soul of the community. And directly across the street from that garden on Francis, when I first came into the community looking around to buy a home in 2010, 2011, was at 604 East Francis. And what I sent out, and what Rich and Cheryl both sent out, were photographs that hopefully managed to make it in JPEG form to your computers of that property as it appeared in 2010, 2011, how it appeared after the Department of Transportation purchased it as part of a right-of-way acquisition secondary to the TBX project sometime after 2016, and what happened to that home under FDOT management. And then the final property photograph was of that same home after it had been returned to housing stock by the Department of Transportation after being hounded by the community in Tampa Heights to do so. That property was purchased, the home was purchased, the home was moved one lot over and rehabbed, and is now a forever home for a family, a young mother, father, and a couple of kids. And you have the photographs of all three of those images. The point of that was really to emphasize, in keeping with the votes that we took at the last meeting, that there are a lot of ways that we can deal with properties along and adjacent to the border of the interstate, other than simply allowing the Department of Transportation to acquire right of way and basically let properties sit delinquent for years until something is done with them. And the negative impact that can have on the community over a period of time. In the case of 604 East Francis, we're talking about a decade of decline. Every time you walked by that property, it was a toss-up as to whether or not you would see used needles or a prostitute plying her wares, and it became a real problem in the neighborhood. And DOT was responsible for all of it. So this home is now probably, if you put it on the market, is probably a $500,000 home, as opposed to being a vacant lot. that same story could be told along 14th Avenue on the north border of 275 and I-4, the very area that the DOT asked us to approve for acquisition at our last meeting. So these things take forever to actually happen. We can revisit it at some point in the future, I suspect. That may all be a done deal for this version of the tip, but please know that there are success stories out there, and the DOT is not necessarily the one that offers the only narrative. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. If anybody ever wanted to drive by there and take a look at this, you might find it very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for bringing that success story to our attention. Anything else under members' interest, Terrence Trott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I kind of wanted to just ask, I don't know if asking Rick is the appropriate thing, but my impression, well, I think in order to make sure that the things that you care about are considered is to make sure that it's a part of the process of the organization. The FDOT should have a process. They should have a way of doing it. If that process is incorrect, then that needs to be looked at. But I don't think that we did anything negative here on the board in regards to the project itself. What I'm saying is that the FDOT, if there's something where they're leaving vacant properties, that's an issue, and that issue should be fixed. It's not necessarily the acquisition of the property that needs to be fixed. That's it.
Thank you, Terrence. Thank you all for bringing these items to our attention. I would like to make one addition. I'm sorry. I see a couple of more comments. Stephen, do you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, on this boulevard, this highway to boulevard conversion, I've been the biggest supporter of this from the beginning, since I first heard about it in the CAC meeting a few years back. One lingering question I've had as I've talked to Plant City leadership is like, okay, so this would be likely, a lot still to be figured out, but likely a good thing for Tampa. I'm wondering, and Reese, I doubt they talked about it in the article you sent, but maybe they did, how this impacts, areas like South County and Plant City, people that the interstate is just a way to get to Tampa quicker and get to St. Pete quicker. It'd be really nice if there was an argument that was, no, this is not only good for Tampa, this is also going to be better for Plant City. And I don't have it yet. I haven't heard it. I haven't, but maybe there is one. And maybe it could be something that could be included into a study that I was talking about. Because, South County and the biggest pushback is going to be people from the rest of the county that are going to say, well, what's in it for me? And so I think we need to include that in the study and have that argument, fleshed out for me to get Plant City on board.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Nicole, did you have a comment?
I think what Stephen's saying, that's great. But what would be in it for you is the ability to come up and down I-4 without a bottleneck, ceasing traffic movement flow to St. Pete as another county. So you'd have a much faster move between I-4, that transition to 275 South. We also, I think, have to stop this concept of what's in it for me. We have to look at the region, what's in it for me when we build new infrastructure in South County, when we have riding infrastructure in the remaining parts of the county. So I want to remind everybody again that we are sitting here to represent citizens. So this is my members' interest. What I'm seeing occur with recent meetings, which has been very frustrating to me. I've been involved for a very long time. And I understand that there's a huge learning curve here for a lot of people. This committee specifically is not you representing or me representing specifically my elected or the department that I'm being placed on this board for. They already have that representation in their vote on the general MPO. It is my feeling that this committee, we should look at the possibility of removing any kind of representation of those who receive funding. For instance, the Port Authority, Aviation Authority, T-BARTA, Planning Commission. This should be a board that specifically represents, let's say, like you just said, Stephen, members who are citizens from varying regions of this county specifically, so that this truly is a board that represents citizens having a voice at the table to influence what occurs by those who now get a vote on this budget that we're going to look at today. And I think it would be an incredible change to what the TPO does, is to remove those agencies having power or having anyone who benefits at all from funding from this committee. So it truly becomes a voice for citizens and not for agencies or representatives. The electeds already have a voice. FDOT has a voice. T-BARTA has a voice. HART has a voice. Citizens do not. It is imperative that this goes back to the way this committee should be. And I would like to propose that these changes are looked at in regards to how we use this particular committee. And I'm going to be
Okay,
circling
Nicole.
back to this with some ideas on this in the future, but this is an interest that I have, that I'm looking at how we would be able to do that. And I would also like to put in a historical context for new members or members who've been here for a while. Initially, the voting members of what is now the TPO or MPO was not supposed to include the Aviation Authority, the Port Authority, or any of those authorities whatsoever on that board. That was a change made that a lot of people who were involved in that vote say was a huge mistake to this region. So there is historical context for this change, which I will be bringing back to this board. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Rich Clarendon, you have a comment?
I wanted to let Terrence go first, but I would just remind the committee that the purpose of having members' interests is to surface items for future agendas or to handle under new business on this agenda. I think we're kind of getting into the details a little bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I want to cut off discussion. It's not debate on this issue. I think we've got a lot of interest in it. I think it's something we'll come back to at a future meeting. I'm sure that Rich has made a note of it, as have I, and Nikki and Cliff particularly. Thank you for bringing these items to our attention. Terrence, did you have a member's interest item, or were you going to comment? All right, Hoyt, member's interest quickly.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on my way home from work yesterday, I got into a car accident in front of the YMCA. I'm okay. I promise I'll get to the point real quick. And the point is that both the people at the Y and the police that came out said, wow, like what a shock. Sarcastically, another accident at this intersection at Palm in Florida. And so I would just maybe ask Rich to consider maybe having some discussion on that intersection as we look to improve, and make Vision Zero improvements to maybe see why there's so many accidents at that intersection. Because, like I said, it was a shock to me because I was in the accident, but it didn't seem to shock to anybody else. So, with that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
I'm sure it was a shock, and I'm glad you're okay. Thank you, Hoyt. I would like to bring before the committee the idea of a future presentation. One of the items on the tip, which will be considered today, is a discussion by HART of the CSX rail line. This issue has not come before our committee anytime recently. It is a project that could have enormous impact on transportation around our region. And I would like to invite the relatively new executive director for HART to come and give a presentation. So Rich, if you would make that note, I think they would be receptive from what I'm told. So with that, I'd like to close members' interests and move on our agenda. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the May 5th meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Terry.
I'd like to enter in a change, please.
Yes, Terrence, go, you're recognized. Is that
And
a
maybe
change to the minute?
correct. I think you could find it on page 9. It's under the discussion section. There's a section with Rick, and then I'm after that where it says express that we think the FDOT has nefarious goals. That wasn't exactly, that doesn't capture what I was trying to say. I believe that the FDOT does not have nefarious goals, and that I was saying that some on the committee appeared to begin their interactions with people from the FDOT with that in the back of their minds. It just seemed like, and then I would like to say I wanted to confirm if the FDOT understands the history of inequity. Because of the line of questioning that was taking place, I wanted to make sure that they understood what we were concerned about, and that they incorporated that into their planning when making decisions.
Okay.
I wasn't really questioning them. I do believe they understand this and that they consider it.
Okay. I think that's a requested correction to the minutes, that they not have nefarious interests, and we'll accept that correction. Are there any other questions or corrections on the minutes? Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair. On the first page, under public comment, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4th line, including the public comment line, says without features report. It should read without futures report, F-U-T-U-R-E-S, not features.
Okay. I'll accept that correction. Any other comments or questions on the minutes? We have 2 corrections. Do I hear a motion that the minutes be accepted as corrected? Terrence Trott will make that motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Fernandez seconds it. Rich, do we need a roll call vote to approve the minutes as corrected? We can do it by voice vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected, please say aye.
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 All of those, anyone in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you for your 2 corrections of the minutes. We'll move on now to the first of our 2 action items. The first one is the Transportation Improvement Program. Dr. Johnny Wong, you are the presenter.
Thank you, Bill. Give me 1 second to get arranged. Can you all see
While he's doing that, let me again thank the members of the committee for attending. Let me thank the 7 of us here in the room for giving us a quorum. This is certainly one of our most important topics and one of our most important meetings of the year. And so it's good to have the ability to consider these items and to take action if necessary. Johnny, go ahead.
All right, thank you for that, Bill. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Johnny Wong, TPO staff. I'm the TIPS program manager for this year. I have already given you a preliminary version of this presentation last month, so I hope that that initial presentation covered a lot of the basics. I'm going to recap some of that information because I know we had a couple people who had excused absences last month, and Aya, welcome to the CAC. If you haven't seen this info, TIP's always a tense day, so let's hope we all take it in stride and then make our way to the uncomfortable conversations. All right, so like I said, I'm here to brief you on this year's TIP update. I want to begin by explaining or recapping some TIP basics that we covered last month. I'll go through these a little bit quicker. I've broken this presentation down into 3 sections. The first is going to provide a little bit of context and explain the process for producing the TIP. In section 2, I'm going to cover the changes that have occurred from last year's TIP to this year's, and then section 3 will kind of wrap up and will lead to the recommended action for the committee. The TIP is a 5-year plan that the TPO maintains. It has 5 years worth of transportation projects in it. It is the first 5 years of projects that come out of the 20 or 25-year long-range transportation plan. Looking at this slide on the screen, the 25-year long-range transportation plan is shown on the left side. That doesn't have the ability to provide a lot of detail on projects. It's purposefully left broad and a little bit ambiguous because details have to be worked out as we get closer to the date where projects are actually starting to move forward. So whereas the 25-year long-range plan is broad and a lot of it is generalized, the 5-year TIP can provide a lot more details. So we have information about alignments and more detailed information on costs and the phasing. That's something that you can't get in the LRTP. The TIP is one of the TPO's main responsibilities. There are a ton of federal and state requirements that we have to follow in producing it. And once we wrap up production of the TIP, once the TPO board approves it, we then submit it to District 7, which will go through a review process, and they'll let us know if we're abiding by all of the federal and state requirements. And once they approve it, then they submit it to FHWA, which will again review it. So there's a lot of checks and balances. On our end, we like to make sure that everything we're required to include is done from the very beginning. So we have already submitted preliminary drafts of the TIP and the tables that I'll cover in a moment to DOT, and they have said so far that everything looks to be in good shape. The TIP is basically just a plan with a bunch of lists in it. At least that's the way that I like to view and understand it. There are 3 tables that require our attention. Tables 1 and 2, I think, will require the most attention, and I'll explain why I think that is in a second, but I'll kind of give you a summary of what to expect as we go through all the tables. Table 1. Table 1 is a list of projects that have already been elevated to the status of priorities. So these were submitted to the TPO as project ideas at one point. The committees in the board decided that the projects fulfill a necessary need for the community, so they became priorities. And they graduated from the priority list to table 1, which is priorities that have received some funding and they're moving forward with construction. Something to note about table 1 is that these projects have funding. They need to remain on table 1 until construction is totally complete, because that sends a signal to the FDOT reviewers and Federal Highway Administration that there's still support for the project, even though it's not complete yet. Table 2 is probably going to require most of our time and energy today. This is always a long topic of conversation, and I definitely welcome that. The reason why table 2 is so important is because this is a list of projects that we think will fulfill an urgent community need. So we have in the past taken a lot of care to identify needs of the community, like safety, reliability, multimodal travel, and some others. And of the projects that get submitted to us as ideas or candidates, these are the projects that we believe will make a positive impact in the community. So we go through a quantitative analytical process to determine whether or not these projects will have or will meet a community need, but it's kind of up to the committees in the board to accept that quantitative analysis. Table 2 is ordered in sequence from most impactful to least impactful. So Based on the data and analysis that we do and the results of that analysis, we rank them in order. So projects that are toward the top of table 2, we believe will have a more significant impact than projects that are toward the bottom. Table 3 is the longest. It's the longest because it includes projects coming from several different sources. In Table 3, we include all of the FDOT projects that are listed in the current work program. We include projects, they're not really projects, they're requests for planning studies. We include some projects that don't neatly fit into our investment programs. I'll touch on that a little bit more in a second. We also pull in projects that are listed in each of the jurisdictions' capital improvements programs. So if there happens to be projects in Temple Terrace's CIP, for example, even though the TPO doesn't control any of those projects, we don't control how they're funded, we still like to include them in Table 3 because we think that that assists in coordination. We want to make it easy for folks around the county to pick up the tip, and if they have questions about what's going on where they live, they don't have to search through a bunch of lists and go to a bunch of different websites. It's all more or less centralized in Table 3. All right, Table 2, that requires a lot more explanation, so I'm going to go through it and take a little bit of time explaining how Table 2 gets produced. Every January, well, toward the end of January, early February, TPO staff sits down with representatives from each of the jurisdictions, Hart, cities of Temple Terrace, Tampa, Plant City, Hillsborough County, the Expressway Authority, Port Tampa Bay, Airport. We have staff level meetings with them and we ask them about their previous year's priorities. We want to check to make sure that the projects they submitted to us last year are still priorities for them and their board. If they're not, we can remove them and we ask them what their future priorities might be. At the end of that conversation, they submit a formal request letter to us, which itemizes all the projects that they would like to see added to Table 2 priority list. Just because they submit the projects to us in that list doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to make it to Table 2. That's the purpose of us doing the data analysis. So we try to locate the most appropriate data to evaluate the benefits of these projects. We perform all of our analysis in-house and then quality check it several times. If the analysis shows that the project will have an impact, it gets added to one of the investment programs shown on the right-hand side of the screen. So we sort them according to what the benefits of the project might be, whether it's an infrastructure project, safety, reliability or congestion reduction, multimodal travel, or if it's a major project. And we sort them according to what the benefit is and rank it based on the data analysis. And that's what we have provided for you today on Table 2, which is also available on the website. That is the draft Table 2, and I assume that I'm going to get comments from you all about whether or not you think the projects are actually meeting a community need. Table 2 has a couple other resources listed in it that are helpful. One of the columns in the document is a suggested funding source. So once we have identified or once we have received the projects in a request letter and organized them according to the benefit and calculated the benefits that we believe the project will have, the TPO tries to match each project with a funding source that's relevant to the type of project, its location, and the facility type. Some of the more common acronyms that you'll see in this column are SU. Those are very flexible funds that can be applied to a wide variety of projects. There are some that are a little bit more restrictive. SIGP is one, CIGP, that's a county program, or it's actually a state program that provides funds to counties to use for projects that reduce congestion on the state highway system. There are some funding categories that apply only safety projects. some that apply only to trails and side paths. All of that information is identified in the glossary, which is an appendix in the tip, by the way. At the request of the CAC ad hoc committee that I met with a couple times over the past couple months, we've added some demographic data to the TIP tool. The TIP tool is located on the TIP webpage using the link that I included at the top of the slide. It shows you the projects listed in the current year's TIP. And since we've added the demographic data, you can go click around onto the different map layers using that little button that I've circled in red, and it can show you what type of projects and how many are located in parts of the community that might have a higher proportion of low-income individuals, or a community that has a high proportion of racial or ethnic minorities. So you can kind of get a sense of the equitable distribution of projects and what kinds of projects are being located around the county. That wraps up section 1. So that's all the information that you need to understand the TIP in the tables. Now I'm going to go through the changes that we've made this year as a result of those meetings with the jurisdiction staff and based on the work programs and the CIPs that we received from the jurisdictions. This year's table 1 has been updated. I would consider it a major overhaul from the previous year. Last year's TIP didn't have an identifiable organizational system for all the projects in table 1. They were just kind of listed randomly. As projects received construction funds, they were just kind of added to the bottom of the list. So they got out of alignment and they weren't ordered in a logical way. We have organized them according to the investment program that they belong to, i.e. what community needs do they address. So it should be much more readable. From top to bottom, the order of the projects is in red: state of good repair and resilience. Those projects are mostly infrastructure. They could apply to roads, sidewalks, also transit assets. The orange are Vision Zero projects, which correspond to safety projects to reduce crashes. In purple is smart cities. Those are reliability enhancements. A lot of tech projects fall into there. So any advanced traffic management systems or upgrades to the ITS network. In blue are the real choices when not driving projects. These are multimodal projects, mostly transit routes, anything that encourages more walking or biking could also fall into there. The green is major projects. That's a bit of a special category because it has a designation because it requires us to provide a lot more info than in the other 4 categories. Anyway, when you're making your way down the list, some of the changes that you'll notice from last year to this year are that 10 projects were removed from the list because construction was completed. Now that they're complete, they can come off, they can graduate. The first is improvements that were made to Marion Transitway. There were some concrete improvements that were made. Bush Boulevard had a resurfacing project last year that was completed. Maintenance to the streetcar track was performed. There were a couple safety projects around elementary schools in Plant City, Stowers and Summerfield schools, elementary schools. There were some operational improvements on the Courtney Campbell Causeway, Dale Mabry Highway between Sly and Van Dyke. A couple transit projects. The Hart Airporter was completed. The funding for the high-speed ferry was operations for the Cross Bay transit route, and Bruce B. Downs from Pebble Creek to County Line Road was a widening project that was completed. 4 projects were removed from Table 1 at the request of implementing agencies. I spoke with representatives from the City of Tampa and THEA. For the case of City of Tampa, a lot of these projects were pulled off the list because of new requirements that apply to them based on the type of grant that they're going after. In one case, I think in one of the green spine phases, there were a few changes that needed to be made. So the city of Tampa requested that we pull those off, and they may fund them using a different source that doesn't require them to be listed on our priority list. Those projects are Rome Ave from Kennedy to Columbus, Green Spine Phase 2B, a trail project on the Selman Greenway from 17th to 19th Streets, and Green Artery segments D and E. We added a lot of projects to Table 1 this past year because they received some funding, and so they're able to move forward with construction either this coming year or it's programmed for a future year. Among these projects, 4 of them are state of good repair. So we've acquired some money for bus replacements, bus stop capital repairs, Vanpool fleet maintenance for T-BARTA, resurfacing projects, bridge repairs. There are a few of those projects listed. 3 safety projects, one on Fowler from Florida to 56th Street, another on Fowler from I-275 to I-75. So this is actually a big project along the entire Fowler corridor, and the portion that's leading into Temple Terrace has received funding. I believe that Temple Terrace is trying to line up funding for the portion from 56th east to I-75. Green Spine phases 2A and 3C, Smart Cities projects, intersection improvements at US 41 and Palm River Road, several projects on the Tampa West Riverwalk, and a major capacity project on Rio Street connecting the Howard Franklin Bridge to the trail network on the Tampa side. All right, so that pretty much wraps up Table 1. Table 2 is, again, this is the part of the tip that requires the most time. So I'm going to spend a good amount of effort explaining how we come up with Table 2 and why it's important for us to use a data-derived process or an analytics process. So Table 2, as I mentioned, it's a list of priority projects that are seeking funding, and we believe that they will make progress toward achieving our targets. Most of what you see on this slide may look familiar. Even though we only set targets every 4 years, you all get periodic updates because we report them back to you in the State of the System report as well. So we do have federally required targets that we set for infrastructure condition like pavement and bridges and transit projects. And so by programming money for projects that will improve, or projects that are related to infrastructure and asset maintenance, we believe that we're going to make an impact on this performance target. The way that we assess the performance of some of the other types of projects is a little bit different. Because we have such a tremendous backlog of projects related to infrastructure maintenance, we typically end up just allocating $4 million in SU funds for bus replacements or bus stop capital repairs to HART. And so they use that to maintain their transit assets. A lot of the other projects like pavement and bridge maintenance are funded through other programs that you'll see in Table 3. There are about 100 of those kind of projects, way too many to list. But as far as the TPO's involvement, again, we just allocate $4 million in funds to HART on an annual basis. One of the priorities that we added to Table 2 this year is for repair and replacement of HART's heavy maintenance facility. This is a really huge project, and the cost estimate is approximately $65 million. HART staff understands that it's going to take a long time to fund that in $4 million increments. So they're working in-house to break that down into a series of smaller bite-sized projects, and ultimately that will culminate in a new heavy maintenance facility. That's actually HART's top priority. So we added that to the top of the SGR, State of Good Repair investment program. The second investment program is Vision Zero. This pertains to safety and reducing crashes. We spend a lot of time calculating our crash performance, each year we bring you a recap of the previous year's crash performance, and we try to predict what the next year's crash statistics will look like. When we're prioritizing or ranking crash projects, we look at fatalities and serious injuries. So in that list of projects that the jurisdictions want to add to Table 2, if we see that it's a safety project, we'll pull 5 years worth of crash data, filter out the fatal and serious crashes, divide those by the number of centerline miles that the project covers, and based on that number, we'll rank them in order. So some of the projects that we've added to Table 2 priority list this year are a project on Dale Mabry from West Mango Ave to West Pearl Ave. There's a West Shore Boulevard complete street project from Kennedy to Boy Scout. There's a project on SR 574, I think that's MLK, from US 301 to Turkey Creek Road. There are 2 sidewalk projects around middle schools, both in Plant City, one at Tomlin Middle and another at Marshall Middle. Lois Ave has a complete street project from Kennedy Boulevard to Boy Scout. There are 2 projects in Temple Terrace. One is a portion of a complete street project on Bullard Parkway from Glenarvin to 78th Street, and another on Davis Road from Morris Bridge to Temple Terrace Highway. I think Temple Terrace Highway is the same. It's the same road as Bullard Parkway. It's where Bush crosses 56. There's a safety project on West Shore Boulevard from Fair Oaks Ave to Neptune Way, and another on Ashley Drive from Tyler to Laurel Street. The third investment program is Smart Cities. This investment program focuses on enhancing travel reliability. Rather than trying to reduce congestion on all corridors at a tremendous cost, we understand that roads are going to be congested. Driving is by far the most dominant mode of travel for folks in our county. So rather than trying to just throw money at a problem that may not be resolved, the goal here is to enhance reliability so that your commute or your travel time is about the same each time you head out the door. There are 4 Smart Cities projects that we added to Table 2 this year. The top 3 are all intersection improvements in Plant City. The first is at Alexander Street and Jim Johnson Road, Alexander Street at James Redmond Parkway, and another at South Park Road in Coronet. We added a project, a transit project that Hart requested, which is scheduling software to better track vehicles and track the arrival times. We believe that that's going to enhance on-time performance. And I should probably mention that some of the ways that we evaluate Smart Cities projects, well, there's actually a lot of ways that we evaluate because these projects can vary so much. The difference between an intersection project and like a signalization project and scheduling software is, they're really nothing like each other. So some of the metrics that we look at when we're ranking these projects are peak period travel time. That's the amount of time it takes you to travel a distance from or during the morning and afternoon rush hour times. We look at travel delay in minutes. For a project at an intersection, we can look at delay within a quarter mile of the center of the intersection. For a project around a specific location, like around a hospital or a school or around a parking garage, we can look at delay within 1 square mile of that specific location. And then for Hart scheduling software, we had to come up with a new metric this year. And so we decided to look at on-time performance, which assesses how often a bus arrives at its destination within a specific window of time. The fourth investment program is called Real Choices When Not Driving. This is multimodal projects. We added 4 new projects this year. The City of Tampa requested funds for 14th Street North, which runs parallel to the Green Spine, and the extent of that project is from Columbus Drive to 13th Ave, right around I-4. The Adamo Drive Greenway Gap is also a regional priority. The gap is from 22nd Street to 34th Street. Temple Terrace requested a footbridge on Whiteway Drive, which will be strong enough to support low-speed electric vehicles like golf carts. And finally, the city of Tampa also requested the South Tampa Greenway at Picnic Island Park. Some of the ways that we evaluate these projects and how we rank them is looking at the population density within a quarter mile of either the trail or the side path, or the population density within a quarter mile of the proposed transit line. The results that we get back are ranked in order from high to medium, and so on. And so if the population density is really great, these type of projects will go toward the top of that investment program. And then lastly, major investments for economic growth. I've alluded to these several times. These are really expensive projects. Traditional capacity projects like highway widenings, anything that adds lanes, mass transit projects could fall in here. Also, anything that is just really expensive. High dollar projects go in here because there are a lot more requirements that apply to us listing these. We have to reference any project that ends up in major investments has to be referenced in our long range transportation plan. So we have to demonstrate to DOT and the federal highway reviewers that these projects have been evaluated in a more stringent way than some of the other projects. The way that we rank these is by looking at employment density. That's just the first filter to ensure that these projects are actually facilitating economic growth. We want to only include projects that are helping people get to work. We also look at volume to capacity ratio. So we want to make sure that these projects are located on a corridor where there is an inordinate amount of traffic. So we don't want to just widen any road that's not having a demonstrable problem with congestion. And then finally, we also look at delay reduction, which assesses the expected impact of the project. How much is it going to reduce traffic? We added 5 projects to this investment program this year. The highest ranking one is West Shore Interchange, major reconstruction. That's been listed in Table 2 in previous years. We had to tweak that a little bit. We also added the North-South Metro Rapid construction, also known as the Tampa Arterial BRT. We added Brush Street from Whiting to Kennedy Boulevard, which is related to the Water Street development. We added Gibsonton Drive from I-75 to 301. That's a widening project, I believe, taking it from 4 to 6 lanes. And Big Bend Road are the bookends on Big Bend from US 41 to 301. So the actual segments are US 41 to Covington Garden Drive, and then a break in the middle, and then Simmons Loop to 301. That's a project to widen it from 4 to 6 lanes. That's also going to be a regional priority, and I'll talk about that a little bit in just a second. I may take back, I'm not sure if West Shore Interchange was listed on Table 2 last year, so forgive me if that's a mistake. All right, so that covers Table 2. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. We're not away from it yet. But Table 3 is a list of all the other projects that are funded in the next 5 years. This is the longest of the 3 tables or lists because it includes all of the projects in the DOT work program, plus the capital improvements programs. We wanted to restructure it because in years past, it has been very difficult to make sense of all these projects. So we reorganized it in the same way as tables 1 and 2. So you can see that the table shown on the screen is red. These are all state of good repair oriented projects. They're all related to infrastructure. In Table 3, there's more than 100 projects to maintain pavement, bridges, and transit assets. There are about 40 safety projects, about 30 reliability or congestion relief projects, 13 multimodal projects that encourage walking, biking, or transit. Among these are HART's Route 11 bus service. There's also some intersection improvements at several locations in South County. There are safety enhancements on Twiggs in downtown. Tampa Street and Florida Ave in Tampa Heights is getting a safety project, and there's also one on Bush Boulevard in Forest Hills. There are 23 major projects for economic growth. Just a couple of these are shown on the snapshot on the screen. So I took a screen grab of the flyer that we sent out to, or we mailed out to all residents living near locations receiving new projects this year. I've already covered just about everything on this list. Two that I haven't covered yet are pretty important, and I want to mention them. There's a corridor management project on I-4 from central Tampa all the way east to Polk County line. That's a really big project, and it has been presented to you and the board in the past. You may have heard of the I-4 frame. The goal of that project is to use it as it's like a demonstration project to deploy technologies that are going to allow the district to relieve congestion without widening it. So they're going to be able to monitor traffic in real time and make adjustments so that if they see a backup coming, they can, tweak the operations and try to avoid that as much as possible. Another major project that I haven't mentioned yet is the I-4, I-75 interchange between Orient and Mango Roads. District 7 is going to be modifying the ramps and adding some auxiliary lanes to improve merging. If you're living near a location that is getting funding in this year's TIP, you will have seen this flyer in the mail. And to summarize all of Table 3, because it's so much, this is a pie chart showing a breakdown of how funding is allocated according to the 5 investment programs. We added another investment program. That's the one colored in gray. It's just miscellaneous. That program category has a lot of planning studies. And again, it's a lot of projects that don't fit into the other investment programs. So you're going to see things in there like pesticide applications, herbicide applications, things that the district is responsible for maintaining its landscaping and other assets, but it's not necessarily a transportation enhancer. All right, those are all of the changes that have been made to tables 1, 2, and 3 this year compared to last year. I'm almost done. I just want to take you through a couple more identify a couple more elements that we've added to the tip and talk to you about what's going to happen after I get done talking. So we have, for the past several years, the TPO at the direction of Beth Alden, we've been working on ways to enhance our environmental justice analysis. This is part of a broader strategy to just incorporate equity and health into all aspects of planning. So this year we tried to map the projects in the TIP out and identify where they are in the community so that we can get a sense of what the investment levels are. This table, and I'm going to explain it, this table, if you read through it, will give you an understanding of to what degree investments are being made in parts of the community that have a high proportion of racial minorities, ethnic minorities, and low-income folks. We calculated the percent of county population that is attributable to racial minorities, ethnic minorities, and low-income folks. The column in the middle of the screen shows you what percent of the county's total population are racial minorities at 17.8. 18.4% of the county is ethnic minorities. Of course, we have a high proportion, or not a high proportion, we have a big population of Latinos and Latinas. So that's why that number is so high. And 16% of the county live in low-income neighborhoods. So that's kind of like the threshold. The column on the far right that's circled in red with that red oval shows you what the results are. So if we wanted to shoot for equality, 17.8% of investment would be made in communities that have a high proportion of racial minorities. That would be the standard. Anything below 17.8 would mean that it's not like there's less investment than equality. Anything above 17.8 would be more equitable. So moving down the list, you can see that for the major capacity projects, less than 17.8% of those total funds or total miles of project are located in communities with a lot of racial minorities. 21% are located in neighborhoods with a high proportion of ethnic minorities and 32% in low-income neighborhoods. Major capacity projects is the one investment program that we're not quite sure what the results mean, right? Because whereas all of these other projects are almost objectively viewed as benefits, major capacity projects are not so straightforward. A lot of times a widening project located in a neighborhood is not wanted. So I would view the major capacity projects with a little bit of a curious eye. The rest of these, I think, are pretty straightforward. Any cell that's colored in red means that there's not as much investment, and anything in green means that there's a higher proportion of investment than the standard. And I hope everyone understands that this is the first year that we're doing this analysis. So it's kind of a work in progress. I'll be happy to answer questions at the end.
Thank you, Johnny.
Oh, sorry, Bill. I'm not done. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer now, but I got a few more slides. So I'm going to keep going if that's all right. Another step in this process is regional coordination. This is actually a really big deal. A lot of people are not aware that these regional committees exist, but they serve a really important function. Our TPO staff is coordinating with other MPOs and TPOs across Tampa Bay. We want to work with them to finalize some lists of regionally significant projects. Every year, the MPOs and the TPOs get together and we try to identify projects that we believe will have an impact on regional travel and regional commerce. Or we also identify projects that will help us complete the statewide bike network. It's really important to coordinate these projects with other counties because we want to make sure that all the projects are consistent, not only with Hillsborough's goals, but with the goals of the surrounding counties, right? Like if it's a regional project, we want to make sure that it benefits all of us. To be eligible for certain funding, certain sources of funding, projects need to be listed in the Hillsborough priority list, the Hillsborough TPO priority list, as well as a regional priority list that's going to be adopted on June 25th. Some of the projects that have regional significance, as in like they're on the regional priority list, are shown on this screen. This is a special regional list because it is projects that we believe will be eligible for TRIP funds. TRIP stands for Transportation Regional Incentive Program, and the requirement for eligibility is that they enhance regional travel and commerce. On the existing list, there's only one project in Hillsborough, and that's the West Shore Interchange. That's actually the top regional priority, and it has been for quite a few years. There was a new submission for this year in Hillsborough, and that is the Big Bend bookends that I already mentioned. Big Bend Road from US 41 to Covington Garden, and Simmons Loop Road to US 301. This is a picture showing the location of that project. As I said, it's the bookends, so on the far western side and the far eastern side. The project is to widen the road from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. The center portion that is not highlighted is the interchange between Big Bend and I-75. That project has already been completed and it was formerly listed on the TRIP priority list. So it was a regional priority that has already been completed. Once we add Big Bend Road to the regional priority list, the county is seeking $13 million in funds for construction. There's another regional list that focuses on walking and biking, the regional multi-use trail priority list, also affectionately known as MUT. Projects on this list have a goal of creating a continuous statewide bike network. There are five regional priorities on this list that are located in Hillsborough, including Upper Tampa Bay Trail. Hillsborough has a South Coast Greenway project, the South Tampa Greenway, Bypass Canal. That's actually Temple Terrace's top priority. There's a new submission this year to fill in a gap on Adamo Drive between 22nd and 34th Street. I mentioned this, it's already listed on our table 2 for your approval. That project's going to not only fill in the gaps for the trail network, but also come with some additional safety enhancements. And then lastly, major regional transportation priorities or major regional transportation projects. This is the last list that we need to cover. We're almost done. To be on this list means that the project will be eligible for some specific statewide funds. There's 4 Hillsborough projects on this list. We've already talked about these because they're also on our table too. The first is the Downtown Interchange Project, I-75 at Gibsonton Road, or sorry, not Gibsonton Road, Gibsonton Drive. Number 8 on the list is the Regional Rapid Transit Project on I-275 that goes from Pinillas north to New Tampa. And lastly, the HART study of the CSX right-of-way acquisition. That's pretty much all the information you need to know. I know that I gave you probably way too much of it, so I apologize. I'm looking forward to the comments that come after this in the discussion. We've already opened up the tip to start receiving some public feedback, and we hope that we'll get more. The draft tip and the tables are already posted on the tip webpage with date stamps. We added a statement on there letting folks know to continue to come back to the website because things were being updated on a daily basis. We wanted to make sure that you all had access to the most recent and current data and information. So aside from posting the tip and the tables on the webpage, like I mentioned, public comment has been open for quite a while. The requirement for us is to do 30 days. We've actually done more than 30. There's a Facebook event posted on our Facebook page. So if you have a comment pertaining to the tip or any project in it, you can go on there, leave us a comment that'll be read off to the board at the public hearing. You can leave comments on Twitter. We have a hotline open, so you can call us and leave a voicemail. You can also send an email. And of course, the tip public hearing is going to be on June 9th. That meeting is going to be at 6 o'clock, and we're going to be registering folks to leave comments in advance. A lot of you have shown up to the public hearing in years past and left long comments for the board to consider. If you want to take more than the amount of time allotted to any individual, you're going to have to sign up with other folks that you're borrowing time from. The recommended action for the CAC today is going to be to approve the update to the TIP document and also to approve the TIP priority list, which is table 2. I'm going to open it up to questions and discussion. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Real quick, before I turn it over to you, I also want to give a shout out to the CAC working group. I thought that that was really helpful for us to improve the TIP over previous years. And a lot of special credit goes to Amy for organizing that, Bill, Terrence, David, Carolyn. I can't remember who else attended, but I owe you all a debt of gratitude for putting that together because it really helped with the production process a lot. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Johnny. I'm sorry to have jumped the gun a moment ago, but I too want to express my appreciation to the ad hoc committee for helping frame this issue. This is the opportunity for our CAC to make formal recommendations or formal comments by way of motion to the TPO regarding the Transportation Improvement Program. There's a lot to cover here. There's a lot of subjects that I'm sure many, if not all, of our committee members would like to comment on. In the interest of time and getting out of here before dark tonight, I would respectfully ask that you try to stay on point, make comments, and when appropriate, I'll entertain any motions. Terrence Trot, I'll recognize you, and then Rick, I'll come back to you in a moment.
Dr. Wong, really appreciate it. Good job. Just a question. As I look at, I really am trying to stay focused on Gibsonton Drive, I-75 area. There's several different initiatives going on in the area. You had the lane widening on Gibsonton, the actual intersection, and then I think some turn or eastbound 301 to northbound 75 construction taking place. Is there a program manager or a regional kind of person that looks at similar projects and maybe reworks them so that way we're not doing, or I shouldn't say rework, I guess looks at them in total to make sure that we're not doing a piece here. Now we have to tear up a mile of something we just did in order to do the next project.
I don't want to have to put her on the spot because she's so new, but I used to be a planner for the county. She could probably speak to their internal processes much better than I could. The only info that I can give is that I think if there were an issue like that, it would be revealed during the design phase. So any issues would probably be noted in the PD&E study.
And we can assume, I'm just going to ask, is the assumption that if we do see projects like that, then, that they're being looked at in that manner?
I want to be cautious on how I say this because I'm not really familiar with the county's process. We're involved and we coordinate with them. I don't want to say anything that is incorrect. There are a lot of QA, QC steps that can be taken to avoid that kind of mismanagement is all I'm willing to say.
All right, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair. Johnny, thank you for that. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, sure can.
Okay. I have a few questions, but I'll just suggest to Chair the purpose of the question is to make sure that the motions I'm going to make following this Q&A are as detailed and surgical as possible. So I'll make sure I've got all my definitions straight. First of all, Johnny, I think you were on the call when Aya made her comment about the Boulevard Tampa project and possibly doing a study of the project, following up on what we've talked about here now for at least 2 years. I question, is there a place on table 2 where we as a committee might recommend to the MPO board that projects such as Boulevard Tampa that have percolated up through the neighborhoods and the community could be listed, specifically designated as community initiated projects, so that these types of projects remain on the radar and don't get lost somewhere in the passing of batons from one generation to the next?
There's not currently a place on table 1, 2, or 3 for a community initiated project to be added. I'll say specifically regarding the Boulevard project, that's pretty well known amongst the TPO and the District 7 staff. I believe that Rich Clarendon is going to give you an update on the status of that a little bit later during this meeting. But based on what I know of the Boulevard study, if I were to make a suggestion, I think it might be appropriate to add it to the major investments for economic growth category, because I see that as a feasibility study to determine what steps would need to be taken if a boulevard were a project that we wanted to move forward. As you see, the HART CSX study is the top priority within the major investments for economic growth program, and I see a lot of similar features between that and the boulevard study that you're talking about.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'll try to take that lead at the appropriate time, or maybe Aya will. I have a question on table 2, line item 47. This relates in particular to the addition of general use lanes north of the downtown interchange. I want to be clear. The narrative refers to phase 2 funding request. Is that portion of the narrative tied to the FPN number? What is it? 4318214? Is that phase 2?
Yes, I believe it is.
All right. So if I were to make a motion to strike that FPN number, it relates to that phase 2 narrative. Is that right?
I'm going to have to call either Beth or Rich for clarification, because I'm not certain how it would work to delete one phase. We have it listed in the table as a single line item, meaning that the projects go together. I'm not really sure how we would handle that, so I'm going to tap that.
Okay, well, that's beyond the scope of my question at this point, but is it in fact that FPN number that ties to phase 2? That's really all I need to know right now.
Yes, it is. The one that ends in 4.
Okay, and line item 48, the narrative that relates to section 5, that's the addition of express lanes between West Shore and downtown. Is that FPN number 4125312?
You're talking about section 5, did you say?
Yes, sir.
Express lanes on 275 from west of Lois to north of the river. Is that the one?
That would be it. That would be it.
That's 412531-2.
-2. Okay. And on line item 49, which takes us to section 6, the downtown interchange, I'm specifically focused on that transition from westbound I-4 to northbound 275, the addition of that lane. Is that FPN number 4450561?
Give me 1 second to pull that up. I think you're right, but I want to double check before I say anything. You know what? I don't have, all I have is the description that you're looking at as well. Justin Hall, I see you on the line. Do you have the work program available that you can clarify?
Yeah, this is Justin Hall, FDOT District 7. I think actually to clarify on a couple of the other FPIDs, just so Rick's got the right answer, because he was asking about the FPIDs. So 431821-4, which is priority 47. The -4 is for the I-275 at Bears Interchange. The -3 is for the stretch of I-275 from north of Hillsborough, which is really Bird, to Bears. So the -3 and the -4 for the phase 2. For the West Shore interchange, the 412531-2 is actually the right-of-way acquisition FPID for the West Shore interchange. The 412531-1 is the principal FPID for the West Shore interchange, and the FPID for section 5 broken out is not included because the new construction segments are a little bit different. But I can try and get you an FPID for that. I just have to kind of dig a little bit. As for the downtown interchange, which movement was it in particular you were looking for the FPID?
I'm looking at the movement from I-4 westbound to I-275 northbound, the one that takes out a portion of the right-of-way in VME Bore.
So the westbound to northbound is the 445056-1.
Okay. And I have one other question for Johnny, and maybe for the FDOT rep.
Go ahead.
Specific Johnny and FDOT to line item 49. We spent a fair amount of time during our meeting last month looking at a TIP amendment that addressed the authorization for funds to take 7 parcels along the northern boundary of I-4 and the eastern boundary of 275 in VME Bore. Was about a $2.5 million price point. This committee approved that. I'm wondering why it is that there's no language in the narrative for section 6, item 49, why there is no narrative in this related to that new funding and the taking of that right of way. This is the TIP document, after all, and presumably is out there on notice to the public for comment. I would think that something that significant would be included in the narrative. Is there some reason it's not there? Because right now I don't think it complies with our notice requirements.
I'm going to give that
Chair?
question to Justin again.
Chair.
The description
Roberts?
for the
Point of clarification.
Just a
point of
moment.
information.
Nicole Rice has a point of clarification. Go ahead.
Okay, or point of information. I believe that funding, as I suggested, would happen. They would shove it into the TIP is line item 67.
Did you say 57?
67.
67. Okay.
20 million, except it's listed like 21st, but it's actually the fixed 21st, 22nd, but it shows real estate acquisition at 20 million on line item 67. That would be right, but I believe that would be tied in.
Okay,
So
thank
the
you for that
FDOT
clarification.
rep, please clarify if that's tied into this as well. That was
Justin,
an
you
addition.
want to address that and confirm that Nicole is correct in her assumption on number 67.
So Justin Hall, FDOT, I'm not sure the clarification. Are you saying that priority 67 is the right of way for the downtown interchange? Is that what I'm just trying to make sure I answer correctly.
I think what she's saying is that the item 67 includes these 7 parcels that Mr. Fernandez was asking about. If that's the question.
No, that's incorrect. The parcels that Mr. Fernandez are asking about, which was the TIP amendment that was brought before the committee and the board last month, is part of fiscal year 21 funds. And this TIP is for fiscal year 22. It's basically the next 5 years. So the TIP amendment, the reason why we had to do a TIP amendment was we had funds in fiscal year 21 to acquire those parcels. And we've actually began the process of authorization through Federal Highway and SHPO to begin acquiring those properties. So priority 67 does not have connection to those 7 parcels.
Okay. I think that was Mr. Fernandez's question. I think that answers it. Rick, anything further?
Well, that wasn't Mr. Fernandez's question. My question had to do with line item 49 and where the narrative is regarding the acquisition of those properties in VME Bore and the $2.5 million price point.
Okay.
And I think the answer is that's already been approved in a TIP amendment for the current fiscal year, correct, Mr. Hall?
Well, and I think probably even more specific, table 2 is requests for funding. So that is anything that's being requested for funding. So the right of way has been funded in the TIP amendment, and the previous TIP, the fiscal year 21 TIP, was approved. And so that's been authorized and we're moving forward. So the table 2, the priority that you're looking for, is now a request for construction funding, not a request for right of way funding.
All right, so there's nothing in this TIP document that would give notice to a member of the Ybor City community about this acquisition of the right of way.
No, sir. It would just be notification of the request for construction funding. The TIP amendment would have been the notification for the right-of-way acquisition for the previous TIP.
Okay.
All right, I'll pass.
Further, other questions or comments on any of the TIP presentation? Yes, Christine,
Hi, can you hear me? I want to make sure I'm not on mute.
you can be heard.
Thank you. Yes, two questions for Johnny, and thank you for the presentation. On table 1, you had a list of the items that are being removed. If you could show that, those things that were being removed. Thank you. Okay, so I know I can't help but notice that these are all active transportation facilities, if I am interpreting them correctly. And I had a question specific, so if you could confirm that, and also the green spine. We have this fantastic green spine that's taking a very long time to become a reality. It's going to be amazing when it's done. And so I wonder if there's any dialogue when there's a component that is removed, if there's dialogue of doing a temporary portion, something using tactical urbanism or just paint and bollards, because we end up having like a 2-block fabulous facility and then nothing for a long ways, and then another portion that is fantastic. And as we go about trying to be a patient community, is there anything that is discussed in terms of a Band-Aid solution for while these things are postponed or taking longer than we'd like? That's my question for that, and then I have another question after this.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the question, Christine. I think the short answer is that it depends. Based on the information that I received from the city of Tampa and BIA, some of the projects were removed as a result of coordination, revealing that maybe the design wouldn't work and that a different solution needed to be evaluated. Specifically with specifically with the Selman Greenway, I think that there was a driveway access issue, and so that required them to rethink the project. So they want to come back to the drawing board and come out with something that will work. So staff to staff, if there's a reason for removing the project, I don't think that that means the project is necessarily dead, but that they're going to try to make it feasible as best as possible.
And then the green spine, any discussion of like if a piece of that in the middle is not going to be fulfilled, any restriping, paint, tactical urbanism, bollards that could still contribute to the overall connectivity while we wait for a few years?
Yeah, thanks. I'm actually going to read the response that I received from City of Tampa. I want to give you all the info that I have. So Green Spine Phase 2B is already done. That's CAS from Willow to North Boulevard. It was constructed as part of a stormwater management project. So that part's complete. So it's being removed because it was already done. Rome Ave is part of the West River Build Grant project, and a portion of the project has been constructed along with that same stormwater project. The city isn't seeking funding through our process. The project's it was listed for illustrative purposes, and now they feel that it's time to remove it. Green Artery phases D and E are under design. They're unfunded priorities because federalization of the project made it difficult to complete. Let's see. Segment D design is ongoing. Segment E design is nearly complete. The city says that they're still committed to constructing in the future, but they're going to use local funds, so it doesn't need to be on table 1.
Super, thank you. That satisfies my inquiry there, and I'm actually very happy to hear those remarks. Thanks. My other question is on the MUT, the regional MUT priorities. Number 9 did not appear to be highlighted, but it is the Gandy Bridge, and there is I'm hearing a great demand in the community since we lost the Friendship Bridge. You know, that is a viable crossing for, it's nearly viable for people to bike across, but the debris is just so bad. So I just wondered if there's any, it hadn't been highlighted, so I wanted to touch on that.
Thanks. I took the liberty to highlight it as you were talking. I'm not sure that I saw Wade on the call. He's the one on our staff who organizes all of that, and I don't have any answers for you. I'll try to get whatever info I can and pass it to you. Oh, he's here.
I'm good now. You highlighted, so, but go ahead, Wade.
Yes, the Gandy Bridge is undergoing a PD&E for whether to reconstruct or rebuild the older of the 2 spans. The latest indications I've heard is that that does include a trail alongside the reconstructed bridge. But I know that that PD&E is coming back pretty soon to committees.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Christine. And while you're on that topic and while we're on that slide, which just went away, let me ask about the Dale Mabry overpass. This was an item that came to our committee a considerable time ago, a year or 2 ago. Johnny, can you tell us where that project for a trail stands and whether or not it would be appropriate for this committee to look at that design again?
I think Wade managed that project, so I'm going to pass it to him.
Okay.
Michelle Ogilvie did, but I was on it with her. The only thing I have to report about that is that in the regional multi-use trail list, that is requested for inclusion with the adjacent segments of Tampa Bay Next.
Has it been designed yet?
No, it has not gone through design, only conceptual study.
Okay, I know Christine in the past has raised some concerns about the connectivity of that. So I'd like to make at least a mental note to take a look at that when the design is underway. Any other questions from the committee regarding the TIP presentation? Hoyt Prindle, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Going back to Rick's discussion a little bit regarding item number 48, can you refresh my recollection here? I seem to recall that at some point the express lanes had been taken out of 275, at least east of the West Shore interchange to downtown, and then those got added back in somehow. Are you able to just provide a little clarification on the history of that?
Thanks, Wade. I'm going to pass that to Justin. I did receive a briefing on which sections of TB Next are receiving express lanes, but it wasn't documented in any of the materials that I got. So I don't want to go on record and say something that is not true. So I'm going to pass it to Justin if that's all right.
Oh yeah, that's perfectly fine. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting the log back. FDOT District 7, Justin Hall. So the question was priority 48, which is the West Shore interchange priority. Is that correct?
That's correct. My question was, I seem to remember, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, that at some point the express lanes had been taken out of the portion of 275 between the West Shore interchange and the Malfunction Junction interchange downtown. And I know at one point the Tampa City Council had unanimously voted against having any additional tolls within the city limits. And so am I correct that that was taken out and then added back in at some point, those express lanes?
I don't believe that it was ever formally removed from that segment. We did formally remove express lanes for the portion north of the downtown interchange. And there's no plans ever to add those back. But I do not believe the express lanes from the West Shore interchange to downtown, which would be section 5, were ever formally removed. I do believe your recollection on the City of Tampa's motion or action item is correct, though.
Okay, and just one additional question about that. So it mentions the terminus being downtown. Where's the terminus of those express lanes?
The terminus is at Ashley, the exit at Ashley Drive. And there's actually a project working with the City of Tampa to realign, reconfigure the Ashley Drive exit based on some development that they would like to do.
Okay, I'll probably save questions related to that for later then. Thank you for answering my question on that. I think my only overall general comment is, you know, we have this very lengthy section that says major investments for economic growth. And of those 20 plus projects, I really only see 3 that you could identify as transit projects. Obviously, I'm very pleased about the streetcar extension, and that'll be good for the city. And I noticed we have the CSX study, which seems to be kind of moving along, albeit a little slowly. And I think my comments on the BRT and how that would not be good have been previously mentioned, but that just seems to be a little out of whack for a county of 1 million people, over 1 million people, to have only, you know, 3 transit projects essentially counting for what's considered major investments in economic growth, considering that, you know, a lot of the cities that are experiencing good economic growth are heavily investing transit. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would yield the floor for the time being. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment, Hoyt. Any other comments from committee members? Terrence Trott, I see you're recognized.
I would just like to ask, on the express lanes, are we saying that the term express lane is interchangeable with tolled express lane, or is it, you know, is it separate? If the express lanes were tolled, would it say tolled express lanes?
Let me try to address that based on my memory. I think Secretary Gwynn at the TIP hearing last year, or at least at a public meeting last year, indicated that express lanes did not necessarily mean toll lanes, that they could take many forms. But I'll certainly defer to Mr. Hall from DOT if I'm in error, or if he wants to expand on that.
Justin Hall, FDOT District 7. Your recollection is correct. So we've been working with the TPO board. In fact, we had I think it was called a summit or workshop on express lanes a while back, where we brought in an expert from Canada who had worked on, you know, quite a few different projects. And the secretary did make it clear that we, you know, are looking at those express lanes for all options. So tolled express lanes, you know, were the previous term, and that's why now they're just referred to as express lanes, because we're looking at all options for those lanes.
Okay.
But they will have some form of traffic management, and that's really, you know, what it comes back to, is trying to help, you know, manage traffic.
Okay, thank you. That answer your question, Terrence?
Yes, except for how somebody looking at the tip would know, you know, what to expect. It says express lanes, and, you know, to me, express lanes are great if you're bypassing some local exits to, you know, to covering larger distances. But if you have to pay for it, that's something else.
Okay. Hoyt, did you want to comment on that? Nikki, I'll recognize you in a moment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just 2 questions related to that for Mr. Hall. I guess the first being is, several years ago, the former DOT Secretary, Mr. Prasad, had implemented a policy that said that all new freeway capacity on interstate highways within the state would be tolled. And so I'm wondering if that policy has been eliminated at FDOT. And then my second question would be if he can identify any instances in the last 5 years where express lanes have been added on interstate highways in the state that were not tolled.
Mr. Hall, would you care to respond?
Sure. I mean, sorry, Justin Hall of DOT District 7. So to answer your question on the, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but like either the order or the guidance from Secretary Prasad. So yes, that has been modified. So that is no longer the policy of the DOT. And that's partly why, we walked back from the previous description that said tolled express lanes. And partly a commitment that the district secretary, so Secretary Gwynn made to the TPO board that we would have a public process to determine what traffic management system would be implemented on the express lanes. And that was based on, I think it was last fall or late summer that we had the previous workshop. So, I mean, and really, and this kind of answering yours, Hoyt, but also answering Terrence's, the hard part with the express lane is until that decision is made, you don't want to predetermine what you're going to do. So I understand that the term express lane maybe is slightly vague, but until we know exactly what type of management system will be, implemented in those lanes, you don't want to, go into too much detail. But there's a lot of options. I mean, I know that I think Beth's on the call, and I know Beth was part of that workshop. And I mean, we talked about a litany of options for those express lanes, for how to, properly implement them to get the traffic management that we're looking for, but, with the minimal impact to the traveling public.
Okay.
Oh, and sorry, you said an
Nicole?
example. Sorry, and Hoyt, you asked for an example where we've added a lane that wasn't tolled.
It's specifically express lanes, not added a lane, but specifically, can you let me know of any instances in the past 5 years where FDOT has added express lanes somewhere in the state without tolls?
So I do not believe we've had an express lane project constructed since the tolling policy was changed, other than DOT Turnpike, which is, they're connected to DOT, but loosely. There were express lanes added to, it's a project in Orlando. It's either the Beeline or one of the facilities that is a beltway in Orlando, where there were express lanes added that did not have an additional toll. The existing facility was already tolled. The express lane was added as just a limited access or controlled access lane that did not have an additional toll on top of the toll for the existing facility. But other than that, no, wait, there haven't been any constructed since the policy changed.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. And I guess the reason I asked that question is, I understand, your point, and it makes sense to a degree about not locking oneself in. I guess I want to see at some point when the department actually moves forward on a express lane without tolls, because it seems to me that is where the department is focused, is typically with toll capacity. And so I'll look forward to seeing if one of those projects goes forward without tolls. But that's why I asked the question. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will yield the.
Thank you, Hart. Nicole Rice, you still have a question?
Yes, I have one question pertaining to 2 line items, but in regards to Justin, with Terrence and Hoyt's question, what I've written down here was that we shouldn't predetermine. We know that there's a policy of the state to do tolls on all express lanes. And I accept your answer that we may not have added any through these certain intersections, but when we specifically state you're defining that we will do traffic management on express lanes, could you give me, before I go into the next portion, because it is a DOT question or FDOT question, could you give me some examples of what you and Beth or those who've had conversations as stakeholders privately have had on how you would define what traffic management options you have besides tolls?
Yeah, absolutely. So the the first part, so the policy of adding all express lanes have to be tolled, that was the old policy that Hoyt was referring to. And the actual policy's been revised, and so it does not say that they have to be tolled. So the new policy does not require that they be tolled. What it does state is that they have to be, it has to manage traffic. And so in the public workshop that we discussed with the board, so it was a public meeting with the Hillsborough TPO board where we brought in several experts, including one from Canada who's done a bunch of work in Seattle. We looked at ramp metering, speed harmonization, transit, transit operation in the express lane. There was probably 5 or 6 strategies that were not tolled. And then on the tolling side, there was 2 tolling strategies that were discussed, which are the 2 most common, which is one is a dynamic tolling, which, has received a lot of press, I would say a lot of bad press, but press regardless in Miami and some other areas, and then also a static toll. But, the 2 tolling options were 2 of, I think, 7 or 8 options.
Okay, so Justin, this is the second part to the question. I'm glad you brought up the expert who is Canadian, because I'm well aware of that presentation because I saw it and I wouldn't call it a workshop, okay? He was very clear in that presentation. He had no concept when he came in. He was actually brought here to have a discussion with us of what the current state of our system was or how our state was established. And he was extremely shocked to find out that our priority was the bus rapid transit for, and he had stated very specifically in that workshop that when we were just speaking about the different options for tolling or express lanes, that this was a way to subsidize a pre-existing system that they're using in Canada. So when I look at the actual tip, and I wanted to see, Johnny, I cannot find the line item again. My phone overheated, so did my computer a few minutes ago, which is why I lost visual. Line item 51, okay, is the line item for the BRT, is the priority of FDOT. Justin, would you agree that Fowler and Florida Avenue are FDOT managed roads?
Sorry, Fowler, and what was the other road? I apologize.
Fowler and Florida Avenue, US 41.
Yeah, those are both state roads, so yes.
Okay, so those are FDOT managed roads. What I find interesting is that if we were to listen to the expert that you just used to clarify your point in regards to the express lanes, what he had stated was a priority was doing arterial bus rapid transit, which is, I cannot find the line item. So if Johnny or somebody could find it for me, but it's the BRT USF to downtown Fowler in Florida. Okay, which actually takes 60, which most of the traffic we already know is almost 60% is going USF to downtown on 275. Why would that not be a priority to FDOT to make that the priority for the BRT over spending millions of dollars, 30 million alone on the study again for the BRT on line item 51, and then also the line item for, oh my gosh, 260 million on line item 47 to add 1 lane each way on the interchange with Soundworks.
Yeah, I mean,
because these are FDOT roads, so why would we not be focused initially on taking care of what we do to get traffic off that piece of interstate versus expanding it when these are actual FDOT roads? So I'm very confused about the priority and the tip with this, and these are all pieces that go together. And that expert was very clear that we're doing this backwards. And that the very last piece of that puzzle was what he said about managed lanes on the highway.
I think just
clear about how we use him as an expert.
I think to suggest, yeah, I think to suggest that we prioritize one over the other would be a fallacy. I mean, this is the MPO's priority list, not the DOT's priority list. And I mean, the DOT, we just submitted for our first federal build grant, I think in the past 15 years for the Heights Mobility Project, which sets up the lane repurposing.
We're not going to use that as leverage again. I'm sorry. I'm not going to accept that in this conversation.
Well, I mean, that has to do with the arterial BRT, because that sets up the dedicated lane for arterial BRT on Florida Avenue that then goes all the way up to Fowler. And then we have the Fowler project where we're looking at doing a lane repurposing for transit along Fowler, which provides the arterial BRT route for Hillsborough for the heart. So I'm not
Which really
sure.
actually services USF more than it does the Heights community. It's a huge servicing for major hospitals, for a major university, which is a big part of the infrastructure of this city and this county, major jobs. So when we try to throw in like, oh, well, you're getting a Heights mobility, that has nothing to do with the Fowler BRT project going down Florida Avenue. So it seems strange to me that this is not a priority, but yet we need to expand the highway, spend $260 million, not fix a bottleneck. And then as well, I'm going to be making a motion in regards to this to prioritize. And I wanted to see if somebody could please find for me where that line item is regarding the BRT USF to downtown Fowler, Florida. But line item 51 and 47, to spend that kind of money when there's an option to remove 60%, maybe 50% of the ongoing traffic for commuters there, is an absolute backwards way to spend funding in this county. So if we could please find that line item for me.
Okay.
My phone
Nicole,
burned out, so I can't actually see it.
Justin, do you want to respond further?
No, I mean, I think she just disagrees, but the Heights Mobility project sets the dedicated lane on Florida. And then we have the Fowler Avenue project, which we've funded, the DOT is funded to construct the dedicated lane on Fowler. So, I mean, we have the dedicated lane going in on Florida. We have the dedicated lane going in on Fowler, which is for the arterial BRT from downtown to USF. So I guess I'm just not sure, I guess the question, so.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Real quick, it's just a one-sentence response.
I think you're still muted.
Okay. Real quick to whomever, Johnny, FDOT, the discussion about the express lanes thus far has really been focused on the Section 5 area between West Shore and downtown. I understand there's some flexibility as to what express lanes are supposed to mean. Does that flexibility apply as well to the Howard Franklin Bridge area? I'm looking at Table 1, which is already in design build for 2020. And it shows replacement with 4 new express lanes. So are those express lanes also still open to definition, or has DOT committed to one or the other modality of traffic control?
Beth, I don't know if I know you were a part of that workshop as well. I cannot remember if Howard Franklin Bridge is part of that conversation or not.
Hi, Beth Alden, TPO director. What I recall from the workshop last fall was that the decision of how to manage the Howard Franklin Bridge lanes also had not been decided yet. I think the secretary indicated that a decision had been made about the Gateway Expressway to go with fixed tolls on that one. But he indicated, as Justin said, that there would be a public process to look at the management strategies for other express lanes in this region.
Okay, thank you, Beth. That's my recollection as well. Other comments or questions on the presentation on the TIP? We're being asked today to vote to recommend the TIP in its present form, both the list A or list 1 and list 2. So I think we're at a point where we can entertain a motion to move forward with at least the first part of this. Rich Clarendon, do we need to approve these 2 separately, or can we do them together?
I'd say that's up to the committee to decide.
Okay.
It can be together, or can be, you can separate them.
Okay. I think.
Mr. Chair, may I make one more remark, please?
Yes, Christine, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. I don't want us to spin out even more on our boulevard discussion. However, Mr. Fernandez asked Johnny where that might be inserted into Table 2, and I think the response was in the large capital expense area. I might not be saying that right, but anyway, the biggies. And my recollection is that it was listed there in the past, but it's of such a scale that it was just immediately, it was positioned for failure because of the size, the dollar amount associated with the study. And this committee had discussions about breaking it into smaller, more digestible portions so that we can keep advancing the dialogue but not have such a large dollar amount. So I just want to repose that question to Dr. Wong. Is there a place in Table 2 where we might request insertion of Part 1 of a study, or Part 1 of 4 parts, or something like that, before we get into the specific motions of how we're going to approve or not approve the tip? Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Rich, go ahead.
So I think these are good questions. I would suggest to the committee that under the status reports, there is a follow-up report, or actually something that was requested by the CAC on the recap of the I-275 Boulevard study.
Yes.
I would, I guess, suggest that maybe we get to that point, and then if we want to make a motion regarding inserting it into the TIP somewhere, we could do that. I would tell you, though, that these types of planning studies are typically included in our unified program as opposed to the TIP, because that's something the MPO has jurisdiction or control over. If it's in the TIP, there would have to be a sponsoring agency, and I just don't know who that would be at this point.
Okay, fair enough. And Christine, if that's acceptable, we will defer adding any action on the tip regarding the Boulevard study till we've heard that status report.
Yes, thank you.
Nicole?
I just cite our time constraints. We're so far behind right now.
I understand. Nicole?
Thank you, Chair. I understand that we're behind, but this is a lot of money. And I still have not gotten clarification. I believe that BRT funding for Fowler, Florida was somewhere in Table 3. Can somebody please give me the line item on that?
Okay.
Yeah, give me 1 second to pull that up.
Because I would like to make a motion that we prioritize or suggest prioritizing that funding over line item 51, which is studying yet again the BRT on the highway, so that we can have the first mile and the last mile ready to go, or ready in advance of any kind of connector that we're going to invest in as a major investment. This is a major investment. And I believe it's way down in Table 3.
Is it in the miscellaneous category, maybe?
It might be, yeah. It was like in a really random place. I'm like, I apologize for making you do this. But like I said, my phone got burned out and it's still overheated. And I'm not saying that the BRT long-term is not an option for the highway, but what I am saying is that there's fun. These are major, we have east and west connection problems in this county for all commuters. This would solve a major east-west connection issue, thereby decreasing the impact of traffic on the highway. And I really do believe that this should be a priority issue over
Nicole,
30 million on line item 51.
Nicole, while he's looking for that, can I ask you, when you talk about the BRT on the highway, are you referring to the regional BRT proposal that would run along the shoulders and other places in the interstate?
I am, because what I'm seeing on line item 51 is problematic. I mean, I see a lot of problematic issues in regards to what is a priority project right now for FDOT, but FDOT is also responsible for the management of Fowler, which is a major east-west connector. And I do believe that this should be a priority to make sure that we have that first mile and the last mile for any commuter, because who is going to get on a bus to nowhere?
No, I understand your position. I just wanted to be sure we were talking about the regional BRT and not the Hart
Yes, Chair.
proposed BRT.
Yes,
Two
yes,
different
Chair.
BRT.
Yes, Chair.
All right,
So
Johnny.
I'd like to
you
prioritize
found it?
that the Hart BRT project, the USF to downtown Fowler, Florida.
Okay, thank
Point
you.
of clarification.
That is what's on
Yeah.
line item 51. It's the Hart
Jeff, go
project,
ahead.
line item 51, not the T-BARTA project.
But it's
Right,
not
right.
specifying the line that I'm seeing. If you want to clarify it for me, Beth, there is a line item in regards to the arterial BRT of the USF to downtown Fowler, Florida project. That I'm not seeing expressed on line 51. So I'd like to know how
priority list. Right, on the priority list, line item 51, north-south Metro Rapid construction, and that's a Hart project. Described Tampa arterial bus rapid transit project. That is what appears on our priority list, not the T-BARTA rapid transit project.
Explain to me why there's a separate line for BRT USF to downtown Fowler, Florida. Or is this a mistake in the alteration that was sent out? Which is possible because there's been multiple changes to the tip over the last week.
Sure, I don't know where else you're looking right now.
Well, I told you I can't look anywhere because my phone's burned out. So it was in, I believe it was in the third. It got overheated. So did my computer one lost visual. So are you telling me that line item 51 is not none of that funding is being applied to any type of bus on the highway? It is specifically to Florida and Fowler funding. Is that correct?
Line item 51 on table 2 is part for the arterial BRT on Florida and Fowler.
Only specifically arterial.
Arterial. It says that, yes, on the tip.
So you need to correct one of the line items in the tip.
And it says that
there's a correction needed in the tip.
So if
I
we're
don't
able to
want
find something that
to leave
contradicts,
Nikki hanging on this. I mean, it's possible that there was something that got changed, but I'm gonna quickly search all the tables for references to USF, just to make sure that there's nothing in there.
If you say that that's the case, then that's, that's fine. I want to make sure because it's very important. I think that any other project we go forward with is going to be a failure if this is not a priority project.
okay, I think, Nicole, if Johnny will look to see, to verify your question, I think your objection is to funding portions of the interstate BRT, which is a regional BRT, RRT, depending on what you call it. The tip, as I understand it, and I think Beth has correctly identified that item 51 is an arterial Hart project unrelated to the
Share any amount of this money going towards building platform stations on said interstate or along the interstate would be an objection as well.
Okay, your objection is noted, and if we can find the answer, we'll be happy to answer it. Terrence Trott, did you have a comment or a motion?
To make sure that we haven't missed anything.
Yes, actually, I had a question just about two line items, number 52 and 61. I didn't notice that they were two. I think I was looking at them as one. Are they the same or are they different? They're definitely in the same area, but if you look at the prioritization criteria, 52 is listed as a major job cluster and 61 is listed as a minor job cluster, but it seems like they're talking about the same streets.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I think that's a duplicate.
Okay.
I'm going to go back and double check everything.
Let's make that major.
Identification of major, minor is not established anywhere. It's based on comparing it to the major job clusters that we have identified, like West Shore, downtown, or USF. So it's along a gradient. I suppose that if two different people were looking at it, they might assess it a little bit differently. But
it's established in the long-range transportation plan. So we'll just go back and make sure that that same standard is being used on this priority list.
And any way to escalate that would be incredible. That train just shuts it all down, as everybody knows, I think.
Okay, good point, Terrence. Anything else? Mr. Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And as a courtesy to those here and on the call, my purpose in being recognized is to make some motions to strike on table 2. But if there are some additional comments or any other questions for the MPO or FDOT representatives, I'd be happy to hold my water for the moment.
I think we're fine. I'm happy to entertain any motions that you may have.
All right, sir. Thank you. And understanding that we're eventually going to take a motion to approve the tip as presented, but in anticipation of that, my motions to strike are addressed to line items 47, 48, and 49 of table 2. Starting with line item 47, I am moving to strike the language from the project status request column to strike the language, construct one additional general purpose lane each direction, quote unquote. Just that language, and I'll make the further comment. These sections were broken out in the tip more individually in the past. They've now been consolidated. It's a little difficult to be surgical, but this is my attempt to be surgical and to address what was previously identified as section 7 of the tip, or section 7 of TB Next, which is that general use lane construction north and south, north of Hillsborough Avenue to Beers. So it's a motion to strike that language in order to remove that particular element of the project. I'd request a second, and then we do whatever discussion.
I'd like to deal with your motions one at a time. There is a motion to strike a certain portion of line item 47 that has to do with the construction of the additional general purpose lanes north and south on I-275. Is there a second to Mr. Fernandez's
Yes.
motion?
There is a second.
Who made this?
This is
Hoyt, was that you? Okay.
Yes.
All right, Hoyt has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion or questions of Mr. Fernandez on the motion to strike? I do not see any hands up. Mr. Clarendon, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out in the chat, point of clarification that Beth made on state law that MPOs cannot remove projects from the tip after the design phase is underway. So she's saying we should get information from DOT about the status of projects that the CAC would like removed.
Well, then I think we can make the motion. We can make the motion and convey it subject to state law.
I'm a little confused on that. We can't move to have any portion of these projects removed?
Under state law, if a project is already in the design phase or the design phase is underway, that's what the state law addresses.
I think the suggestion was good to just specify subject to state law, and then we will investigate whether that's applicable in this case.
Okay. I do have a comment in support of the motion, if the chair will acknowledge.
Mr. Fernandez, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, just by way of precedent, not that it's binding on us, and for the benefit of those that are new to the committee, almost an identical motion was made by me last year at this time, and this committee did move to strike this section from the tip and passed it on as a recommendation to the MPO board. Ironically, this was probably the line item that received the most support from the MPO board in terms of our recommendation to strike. I think something on the order of 6 or 7 members of the MPO board voted to strike these lane constructions. That said, we should also note historically, although it has not been rehashed in this iteration of the tip, This particular piece of construction has been vetted by community input, as specifically Seminole Heights and Tampa Heights. I don't remember so much VM Ybor or Ybor City, but the Seminole Heights community in particular, which is the community through which this corridor slices, rose up in opposition rather vociferously at a public hearing just prior to last year's tip. And clearly they're a community of concern to us since they are bearing the burden. So to the extent that we care what our citizens think, they aren't supportive of this construction project. For those of you that are new, there's also the concept of induced demand. We've talked about it here ad nauseum, but please understand that this is a straight up capacity project, which is intended to reduce congestion. It's doomed to fail because induced demand will bring more traffic onto the corridor. And at the end of the day, you'll simply have a larger parking lot, not a correction to the problem. So all that said, I hope you'll find it in your heart to support this motion yet again.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Any other comments on the motion? Nicole.
I wanted to say that also earlier, which I thought was a great presentation that Johnny and I did want to say is awesome how you guys color coordinated this year, that the language that you used was that it was up to the board to prioritize projects for the community that have a positive impact and a set quantitative analysis, and that that's the responsibility that we have. So we have had many discussions, even opening up with Cliff, about different options, about the changes of where we're at and where we're going as a community. I do not see why this should be an issue to make any changes to this line item as a suggestion to the MPO voting board. And I do feel we have a duty to do so.
Thank you. I'm about to make a comment, but I'd like to ask Beth if she can confirm my information. I believe that the construction of these additional lanes does not require any additional acquisition of right-of-way. Am I correct in that, Beth?
That's what we understand.
Okay, all right. Any other comments on the motion? If not, I would like to call for a vote. If Gail, will you call the roll? I think we should do this by a roll call vote.
Absolutely. Carolyn Brown,
Yay.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Sorry, no.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Alexis Bobak,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Aya Yassin,
You're being called.
Aya
You're
Yassin.
you're muted.
Is this for the, for crossing that sentence?
Yes.
Yes.
So, no, I disagree.
Artie Fryer, Bill Roberts,
No,
Don Skelton,
No.
Beatrice Zafra, Cliff Rice,
No.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Amy Espinoza. I'm sorry, she's not here. Rick Richmond, Rick Richmond?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, your vote.
No.
And Barbara Kennedy Gibson? I'm sorry?
She said
Can you,
yes.
okay, thank you. Would you like me to go back to the people who did not respond?
No, I think we'll total the vote where we are.
Okay, so the motion does pass 9-6 with
Okay.
1, 2, 4 non-votes.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Is that Hoyt?
Can we just double check that count? Because I had 10 in favor and 6 against it.
So did I.
I did too.
I also had 10.
Gail,
Mr.
Brenda,
Chair, this is Artie Fryer. I'm sorry I had to step away. I'd like to vote if I can.
I think the vote is over, Artie. I'm sorry that you had
All
to
right.
step away. We're trying to confirm the actual number of votes. Gail, a couple of us have 10-6.
Yes, Beatrice is in the room. Did she vote? Because I did not hear it.
yes, she did vote.
And what was her vote?
I said yes.
Then that would be 10-6.
That may be the one you missed. Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Beatrice, for clarifying that. Okay, the motion of Mr. Fernandez to strike that portion of line item 47 is passed. Did you have additional motions, Mr. Fernandez?
I do, sir. And along the same line in terms of protocol, this is to line item 48. My purpose here is to address what was previously known as Section 5 of the Tampa Bay Next project, which is between West Shore and downtown. I am moving to strike the language in the narrative, project status and request column, quote, add express lanes on I-275 from west of Lois Avenue to north of the Hillsborough River, Section 5, with connections at Himes Avenue and downtown Tampa, close quote. And then at the end of that narrative, quote, and Section 5, I don't know what that is after, oh yeah, Section 5, 253 million, etc.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Prendergast has seconded the motion. I'm pausing only to identify that I'm trying to identify the 253 million, and Rick, you're proposing that dollar amount be stricken from the tip.
Well, it looks to me like that $253 million amount is attached to Section 5, which is why I included it in the motion. I'm not 100% sure that's true. And if it isn't, well, I can remove it. But
No. I read it differently, and I think that confuses us and gets us two items in the same motion. So
okay, well, how about if I amend it to exclude that last few words and just end the motion to strike at Himes Avenue and downtown Tampa, close quote, just that section in the middle of the narrative.
I think that's much clearer. So we have a motion and a second to strike this portion of line item 48 with regard to the West Shore Interchange project. Is there discussion or other questions regarding the motion? Terrence Trott.
Yes, I don't understand the motion.
I
mean,
certainly we don't want to, I don't propose to speak for Mr. Fernandez, but I think what he's trying to do is to eliminate the provision for express lanes between downtown and Lois Avenue.
Just
on the
in
I-70,
section there.
on the I-275 section. Is that correct?
That would be correct. What was previously known as Section 5, and we voted on it last year as well, but it was broken out individually then.
Yeah, and it is a bit confusing because last year this was a separate section, this portion of the interstate renovation has now been rolled into what is generally called the West Shore Interchange. They kind of lumped it together. So are there other questions or comments on the motion? Rick,
Mr. Chairman.
Rick Richmond, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to find the reference material, but I did see that Hart had a project called the Airporter. Was any of that planned to use any of these express lanes?
Johnny, do you or Beth know if the Airporter proposal, which is a separate line item, includes use of these express lanes?
So the DOT has indicated previously that the transit agency will be able to use the express lanes without paying. So they would be available for use by Hart if Hart were operating that service.
Okay, so I will take that as a
Thank you.
yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Rick, go ahead.
Well, I will say, I know that a lot of the T-bar to RRT is up in the air, but they are also looking at this corridor to utilize express lanes if they were constructed. So just some context.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding this motion to strike a portion of the West Shore Interchange line item? Seeing none, Gail, if you would be kind enough to call the roll on the motion.
Carolyn Brown,
Yay.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Steve Hollenkamp,
No.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Alexis Boback,
No.
Christina Costa,
No.
Aya Yassin,
No.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Bill Roberts,
No.
Don Skelton,
No.
Beatrice Zafra,
No.
Cliff Rice,
No.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
No.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson. Ms. Gibson?
She's in the room and voted yes.
Thank you, and the motion fails 7-10.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Fernandez, any other? I think you had a third.
I have one more. Line item 49, which relates to the downtown interchange. And in similar fashion, I will be moving to strike certain language from the project status request column narrative. And quote, an addition of a lane, again, an addition of a lane on the ramp from westbound I-4 to northbound I-275, period. Modification of the I-4 eastbound exit ramp to 21st, 22nd Street, shift to 14th / 15th Street, close paren, to eliminate weaving, period, close quote. I hope that was sufficiently confusing for everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Fernandez, can you please repeat that?
Or Rick, could you simply, are you opposing both ramps? Is that the intent of your motion?
Yeah, the idea is the I-4 westbound to 275 northbound lane, which would be wiping out the right-of-way area in VM Ybor that we discussed the last meeting, and also the exit ramps that are being proposed by the Department of Transportation to dump traffic onto 14th and 15th Street in Ybor City. A move that has been opposed by the historic Ybor Neighborhood Association as well as the YCDC in the past, and we've opposed it ourselves here as a committee.
Okay.
That's the purpose. I'm not touching the flyover from southbound 275 to eastbound I-4.
Okay, thank you. I think
Rick,
that helps clarify it. There are,
can I ask Rick if I highlighted the correct language that he wanted to strike?
go ahead.
Is
Can
this
you
the part
expand
that
that, Johnny?
take out,
I'm
Rick?
having hard. Can you enlarge that, Johnny, so we can see it? I think that's correct.
Yep, that's it.
However, Mr. Chairman, we do need a second for that motion.
Well, I
I
wanted to
second
get
the
it
motion.
clarified. Who made the second?
Christine, I second the motion.
Christina Costa made the second. We have a motion and a second to strike the language that would provide for the two ramps. One, an exit ramp from eastbound to northbound, and the second ramp from I-275, eliminating or dumping traffic onto 14th to 15th Street in Ybor City. Is there question or discussion about the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Hoyt, go ahead.
So just from the way this language is written here, am I reading that to say that the exits at 21st and 22nd are being moved to 14th and 15th? Or okay, so the 21st and 22nd Street exits will be eliminated. Am I understanding that correctly?
No.
No.
Okay,
No. 22nd Street connections will remain. 14th and 15th Street will be added.
Okay.
FDOT would like to clarify that it may not be feasible to move forward with the southbound 275 to eastbound I-4 improvement without that change.
Why is that?
But I think what she's saying is that they may need the room for the flyover by making this adjustment. Is that correct, Beth?
I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't really speak to the weaving movements, but I understand it has to do with how the lanes come across.
No, but my attempt at clarifying this for Hoyt is that for the flyover to be constructed, the DOT may need sufficient additional space that these exit ramps would provide. Is that your understanding?
I think that's pretty close, yeah.
Okay.
I guess what I don't understand is why you need, and the reason I'm asking is because I'm debating whether to make a motion to amend Mr. Fernandez's motion. I don't understand why we need an exit ramp to then allow to have a flyover ramp. It wouldn't seem to me that you need an exit ramp just to have a flyover ramp. And I guess that's where my point of confusion is. So I don't know if it would be inappropriate, and I would defer to the chair to maybe having FDOT answer that question during this discussion.
I'm happy to ask FDOT to expand on it, but I think I've been out and looked at it and driven it and have some general knowledge of it. Mr. Hall, do you care to respond?
This is Justin Hall, FDOT District 7. So the reason why the modification at the exit ramp is important is because it adds it. You know, is there a way for me to share my screen? It may actually be easier to physically show it than to explain it.
Sure. Can we make Justin the presenter?
Okay, let's see. So I don't know which screen it is going to show, but we'll see. I'll kind of roll with it. Which screen are you guys seeing? Are you seeing this, my big?
Seeing your home
Seeing
screen.
your desktop, which looks
My desktop. Okay, good,
crazy.
good.
Enter your
Yeah,
access
trust me.
followed by the pound or hash sign.
Let's see, section 6. Here we go. Let me bring this over.
You entered no digits. Please re-enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Somebody's muted and needs to mute.
Can you guys see my screen?
No digits. Please re-enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
We can see your screen, but we're also getting some audio interference from someone trying to sign on.
Oh, gotcha.
Chairman Roberts,
Yes.
just a point of information. If Justin Hall is going to clarify this, could he also clarify how this impacts the bottleneck? Adding additional lanes, please.
Sure. If he's comfortable responding to that way. Justin, go ahead and explain particularly the southern ramp and how that may or may not impact the flyover. We see your screen.
Okay, good. So as you can see, so when everyone's talking about 21st, 22nd, so your access on and off 22nd going westbound stays the same. Your access onto the interstate going eastbound from 21st stays the same, but the exit ramp will exit if you're going, southbound to eastbound or northbound to eastbound. It would exit at the 14th, 15th, and then continue on. There's already a lane there, so it's just finishing that lane out. So there'll be 2 lanes through to 21st, 22nd. And the reason why that has to be done, as you can see here, it then provides the space for the second lane coming from 275 to appropriately transition into I-4 eastbound without conflict from the exit ramp onto 21st. So, and that's why when it says we're eliminating the weaving pattern, so instead of having traffic coming from the general purpose lanes trying to cross the ramp traffic to get off the 21st, 22nd, you're now taking that traffic out earlier, and you're enabling for a smooth transition for the traffic going from southbound to eastbound into the general purpose lanes, or into the main line on eastbound I-4.
And I think, Justin, for me, it's helpful to understand that these are exit-only lanes. They're designed to keep traffic from trying to get into the general purpose lanes going eastbound. Is that correct?
It's to prevent. So now we have a weave. So you have traffic that's either crossing over to go to 21st to get off on 21st, or they're crossing over to get onto the Crosstown Expressway, all kind of in this general area, while you also have the traffic entering from 275 southbound. So this is just simplifying the movements. So if you want to get off on 21st, 22nd, then you're getting off, before the merge happens for the general traffic that wants to go from southbound to eastbound, merges into the I-4 eastbound main line. And you'll see what that also does, though, is it creates a dedicated lane. So, currently right now when you come around the flyover, there's a single lane and it mixes with the traffic that's trying to get off onto 21st. So not only will this dedicate a dedicated lane for that southbound traffic to go I-4 eastbound, but it also adds a second lane, which, this graphic's very condensed, and we did that just so we could show it as easy as possible with the lane callouts. But you can see, it gives you a period of transition for the second lane, to merge into the general lanes before 21st, 22nd.
Yeah, I think the graphic is very helpful. Questions about this pictorial, because it really shows both of these proposals that Mr. Fernandez is proposing to strike. The one on the lower half is the 14th and 15th exit. The one on the upper half is the new traffic lane exiting to northbound. Questions?
So if I understand it, apologies, Mr. Chairman. If I understand what you're saying, Mr. Hall, essentially it is because the northbound 275 traffic, the exits being shifted up. And so what you're saying is that rather than have that continue on its current path and just have this right lane be an exit only lane, That because this is shifted up, that's what you're saying in terms of why that exit needs to be changed for the flyover ramp.
So it's twofold.
Am I saying that clearly?
Yeah, no, so I think, so it's twofold. So yes, that's part of it. So you bring the I-275 northbound traffic that's exiting on the 21st, 22nd, you take them off of the interstate before they enter the interchange. So that's one of the conflict points. The other conflict point is anyone that was coming 275 to I-4 eastbound, or someone who missed, currently would get off at I-4 eastbound at 21st, 22nd would cross this lane. So right now, if you didn't modify 14th, 15th Street, you'd still have the weave pattern, but also the southbound to eastbound, the additional lane has no receiving lane. So there's nowhere for it to go. There's no pavement for it to go into. So it would have to, what you'd have to do then, which would be ill-advised, would be you'd have to actually shift the structure to where both of the lanes then take two of the lanes that are going from 275 north to eastbound. So you'd condense the traffic into one less lane, but still have the same number of movements, because there'd still be traffic crossing to get off on 21st, crossing to get on the Selma Expressway, but they have one less lane to do so. So, and honestly, I think last time we looked, there's no way to construct it on the inside lane without reconstructing all of the other ramps, because you have to move pier locations.
So as I understand, you can't move the flyover ramp to be on the inside lanes entering that junction.
No, so they're not mutual. I guess they're mutually exclusive. So if you remove the I-4 ramp, then you have to remove the flyover. They're a singular project. So the flyover ramp needs the modification of the 14th, 15th, 21st there on the south side.
Okay, I think I've asked enough questions. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Art. Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Sorry.
Yes. I have a hand, but is that Nicole? It's covering your face. Go ahead. You're recognized, Nicole.
Because I'm like, the reason that we're having to do this is because of the flyover, which backs up. So the assumption that adding a second lane to that is going to get rid of that, and then taking out portions of the neighborhood is going to fix it. Because having lived in Tampa, my whole life and driving back and forth to Ybor, we just fixed this and reconfigured this in the last 10 years. So now we're fixing the problem again. This was all redone into Ybor City within the last 10 years.
So, yeah, we understand that. Is that a question for Mr. Hall?
I mean, it's kind of a statement in the sense that clearly the fix wasn't a fix. So now we have another fix that takes up more land that doesn't look like it's a fix, because we're creating a double flyover and a double underpass. So we're doubling the problem, because I can't even think of how many times we've done this. Plus we've shifted traffic back and forth across to exiting on the left or exiting on the right. What data do you have that this is going to actually fix the issue, which is the bottleneck?
Yeah, I think that.
Well, I think that, Mr. Hall, I think that's a fair question, but I don't think it's germane to our motion that we have. We have a motion to recommend that the tip be modified by deleting this language. I'd rather stay on that topic. Happy to address Nicole's question at another time, because it talks about the concept of the redesign of the interstate. We've been through that a time or two. Are there other questions regarding the proposed motion that Mr. Fernandez made and Christina Costa seconded? Any further question? Seeing no hands, I would like to ask Gail if you would call the roll on the motion to eliminate the language that provides for these two exit ramps at the interstate intersection. Thank you.
Of course, Carolyn Brown.
Yay.
Wait, Frindle?
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp?
No.
Nicole Rice?
Yes.
Alexis Bobek?
No.
Is Christine back on? Christina Costa?
You may have,
Aya Yassin,
No.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Bill Roberts,
no,
Don Skelton,
No.
Beatrice Safra,
No.
Cliff Rice,
No.
Sharon Gamond,
No.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
No.
Rick Richmond,
No.
and Barbara Kennedy Gibson. I'm sorry, I can't hear her.
She said no.
Thank you. And the motion fails 12-4.
thank you, Gail. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to recommend MPO adopt the TIP. We're going to lose our quorum here in a few minutes. Does anyone care to make a motion to approve the TIP, including the one motion that we have passed to amend it?
Motion.
I won't try to read it. Aya has made a motion
Motion.
to adopt the TIP.
The tip.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Beatrice will make a second. Is there further discussion on the TIP? We're voting to approve it with the one amendment that Mr. Fernandez proposed and that we have approved. Mr. Pringle.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd actually like to make a, I don't know if this is procedurally correct, but I'd like to make a motion to table this particular motion because there was another motion that I wanted to make regarding the tip. So I don't know if that would be procedurally correct, a motion to table.
Uh,
And
I think if you have further amendments or changes you'd like to see in the tip, they would be appropriate as an amendment to the main motion. We do have a main motion and a second on the floor. If you care to amend it, I'd be happy to entertain it, but I will not entertain a motion to table.
Okay, then, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend the tip on item number 48, just to strike. I apologize. I mean item number 49, just to strike the portion that says shift to 14th and 15th Street to eliminate weaving.
Second.
Nicole Rice second that motion. So we have a motion to amend our recommendation on the tip, and it would simply eliminate the language in item number 49 on the tip. And I'm not going to try to paraphrase it. But let me ask Coit, are you proposing to eliminate that one ramp provision? Is that what you're attempting to do?
Yeah, so to provide clarification on my motion,
Okay.
and the reason I asked Justin the question during the last round, and I certainly felt very conflicted during the last vote, but the neighborhood in Ybor has great concern about the 14th and 15th Street exits. It's a neighborhood that has paid the price more than many communities in this county for freeway expansion and past decisions. And going back to Stephen's comment a little bit, I mean, if you live in Plant City and somebody says, "Hey, we're going to put a freeway next to your house," your perspective is a lot different than, "Oh, somebody over on the other side of the county has to deal with this." And so, I don't want to necessarily fully mess with the safety improvements. I understand what FDOT is trying to do here, but I do think there is enough community activism against specifically the 14th and 15th Street exit that I'd like to see if there's a way that we as a community could try to maybe have a little consensus and say, okay, we'll move forward with the safety improvements while not dumping additional traffic onto 14th and 15th Street, and trying to keep somewhat of a semblance of the freeway as it is there. So my motion is designed to keep the safety improvements and on the ramps and take out 14th and 15th Street. I understand obviously the comments Mr. Hall made, but I'm trying to find a way maybe to bridge the gap here.
Okay, and I appreciate that clarification. I would only add that this ramp does not require any additional right-of-way, and it will not expand or remove any additional housing. Are there other questions or comments on Mr. Pringle's motion, which is to strike basically the southern ramps? Yes, Aya?
Agree with him. I definitely felt the same conflicting when I was making the motion, the original motion about the deletion. So I agree. This is a sentence that I would like to delete. Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right,
Mr.
we have a
Chair?
motion. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to be super clear. If we're saying we're deleting the verbiage, what does that do to the design and the plan?
Well, I'm not really qualified to answer that question, but my sense is that that we're deleting the language that would include the design and implementation of this ramp in the interchange redesign. Beth, would you care to expand on that? And maybe not.
Yeah, so to follow up on that comment, I mean, the designs are done. We're not saying remove 14th and 15th Street. We're getting rid of the verbiage in here. That's totally how
I
I'm.
don't want to speak for Hoyt, but I think his intent would be to eliminate the provision for these exits. Disagree with me if you choose.
I would agree, Mr. Chairman. I would only add this. You know, everything we do here is a recommendation. We can be ignored by the MPO. We can be ignored by FDOT. So this is, I will admit, somewhat aspirational, especially given this confusing thing where we can't, according to state law, change things that are in the design phase. It's something I'll follow up on at a future meeting. But in terms of what we should recommend to the MPO, what they do with it is their own concern. I think we should recommend that they move forward with the safety improvements at minus the 14th and 15th Street exit, which is opposed pretty heavily by the community. And that's the purpose of my change. And I don't know that I need to say anything further.
Thank you for that clarification. I think with that, I'll take one more question. Stephen, you're recognized, and I'd like to vote on this item before we use our
Thank you,
quorum.
Chair. Just a point of clarification. I hate to delay things anymore, but I don't quite get exactly what we're talking about. It would be very helpful if Justin could bring up the image again and sort of circle, like, this is the street that would be removed from that plan. Because as it stands now, I just don't quite grasp what this would do, what the alternative would be.
Mr. Hall, can we share your screen and have you just circle that 14th and 15th Street exit?
All right. Can you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
I'm not sure exactly what the request is for, but this would be the 14th, 15th Street work, which.
Right.
And so then the idea, Hoyt, is that bottom part that comes from 275 North, turning right onto the bottom yellow corner, that would be removed?
Yes.
Okay, and then everything else would be the same. And then that traffic.
Well, everything is not the same because there is a proposed exit off of the yellow flyover, which is new construction. and that also exits onto 14th and 15th. So
Okay,
I
so
don't have
remember,
the ability to draw the circle, but that all would, we're recommending that not be included.
okay, I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'd like to call for a vote on the motion. We have a motion to delete this language, providing for the 14th and 15th Street exits. Gail, if you would call the roll, please.
Carolyn Brown,
Yay.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
No.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Alexis Boback,
Yes.
Christine is not back. Aya Yassin,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Bill Roberts,
No.
Don Skelton,
No.
Beatrice Zafra,
Yes.
Cliff Rice,
No.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
No.
Rick Richmond,
No.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
She said no.
She's voting no. Okay. It's a tie vote, 8-8.
Each motion fails.
And that means the motion fails. We've failed to reach a majority. Thank you very much. Now I'd like, in the interest of time and a quorum, to address the main motion, which is to approve the tip. We have one amendment that the committee has approved. Gail, would you be kind enough to call the roll for the main motion, which is to approve the TIP as amended?
Yes, Carolyn Brown,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Steve Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
No.
Alexis Boback,
Yes.
Aya Yassin,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Don Skelton,
Yes.
Beatrice Zafra,
Yes.
Cliff Rice,
Yes.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
No.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson.
Yes.
And the motion passes 14-2.
Okay. Thank you very much, committee members. I think that gets us through the first of the two action items on our agenda. Thank you all for your participation. This is always an interesting and very valuable exercise for the committee. I will be sure to make the verbal presentation to the MPO board as to our actions today. The next item on our agenda is an action item on the public participation plan amendment. If we can have that presentation, I'd like to move to it quickly.
Can we make Davida the presenter, please? Okay. Your screen is showing, Davida. Davida, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, can you see the screen with the hand?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, hi, everyone. I will try to swiftly but efficiently go through this. This is your action item for the public participation plan amendment. Just as a quick recap, the TPO has this, what we call a PPP. It describes our strategies to engage the public in transportation planning, and it spells out how the public can review and comment on pending decisions such as TIP amendments. And for the TIP amendment, public review and comment, that period coincides with the formal presentation such as what we're having today. And the advisory committees, they are asked to recommend approval, just as what you've just done. Beginning this year, the TPO board changed its meeting schedule, and so now it meets on the second Wednesday of the month. And so because the CAC and the TAC normally meet a week ahead of the board, the minimum public review and comment period should be reasonably adjusted from 21 days to 14 days to coincide with the mail out of the agenda packet to the TAC and CAC. At your last meeting, some of you did express some concern about shortening the notification window. And so to address this, we are proposing additional public outreach for each TIP amendment going forward. So here are the steps that we are proposing. And I'm going to use the Fowler Avenue TIP amendment as an example. That was where there was some money that was left over, and it was assigned to fix crosswalks on Fowler. All right, so to give you an example here, this is what we did. With the Fowler Avenue TIP amendment, we posted the amendment on a website, which is our TPO website. And then we also, we did have public comment during the formal presentation. But this is what we're going to do with this proposed PPP amendment. We are now going to create a web page for a single web page, not just a listing under the TIP web page, but a single web page for each TIP amendment. And we're also going to create press releases that will link to the web page. And we are going to have social media posts that will also include the link to the web page. And then road signs that are going to be placed in the areas that will be most impacted by the TIP amendment that's being proposed at the time. And those are our interventions that we are going to put in place under this revised now public participation plan amendment. So again, before we just had the posting of the amendment on the website, on the TIP page, as well as the public review period. Now we're going to do a bit more to make sure that the public will be more engaged and involved in the process. So our recommendation is to approve the public participation plan amendment.
Thank you very much. I think those are good improvements. I don't mean to rush you, but I want to be sure we get a chance to vote on this. Terrence Trott, do you have a question or a comment? Sorry, I think you're muted.
I was going to make a motion to accept it or approve it.
We have a motion to accept the public participation plan amendment. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second it.
Beatrice will make a second. Is there any discussion on this amendment? I think it's coming back to us in an attempt to address some concerns expressed by this committee at a previous meeting. Aya, comment.
I was wondering if you guys also thought about putting QR codes on the signs that you going to put in the road to connect to the website, because I think that is the only link or only thing that you don't have the link to the website. Like, or someone can take a picture of the QR code on the road and then they can take them to the website for what it is to learn more about it.
That's a great recommendation, and we sure can go ahead and integrate that in the road sign. So thank you for that.
Great.
Good idea. Good. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Fernandez. Quickly.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the public engagement will include page. I wonder if we might add a bullet point there suggesting outreach to neighborhood and civic association leadership, presidents, transportation committee chairs, etc. I suspect the MPO has these people on a mail serve already, but something that proactively reaches out to them and lets them know so they can then do their job to notify their constituency might be a helpful inclusion.
Mr. Fernandez, would it be good for them to receive the press release, because we are anticipating that our mailing list will include those neighborhood groups when we send out a press release to the media. So would that be suffice?
If they're on the mail list somehow as a specific group, community association, neighborhood association leaders, if those guys and gals are being specifically touched, that would satisfy my concern.
Okay, we definitely can do that. Thank you.
Nicole Rice.
It could also allow organizations or individuals to sign up for automatic notifications. As far as the signs go, recently some signs have gone up in regards to public requests for the county. They were up for 2 days and now they have been turned into panhandle signs. So super effective. Just want to let you know that's how your signs are being used. So let's not pretend like that actually reaches out to the community. I'm not quite sure. I feel like I still have an issue with the time allotments on this, and I understand why this is a challenge because of the way that we're circulating our meetings. But I do feel this is not reaching the maximum amount of people. And are there any other avenues or ways to share this information that really is effective?
So one of the things that we have looked at, Ms. Rice, is that we can boost our social media posts to pinpoint specific demographics by zip code, by interest. So that is something that we did look at and that we can do if you feel that would help generate a bit more engagement. And it has, if you're on social media, you've probably seen some of those pointed posts or ads. So it is effective.
I've never seen anything ever from any of this, and I sit on many committees and many political groups, and this information is hard to understand. It's complex. No matter how many times you explain it to people, and I've even hearing this today, I'm very disappointed, by the way. Even people who sit on committees don't understand it, and people who vote on it don't understand it. So I still feel like this is not information that is accessible to the public, and there has to be a better way. I have seen some adjustments and changes in how we roll out stuff, and we've gotten way better. Huge improvements based on feedback, but this is still not accessible to the public.
Well, let me explain the boosted.
Still go.
So let me explain the post again. So what you may not have seen as of yet are our regular standard social media posts. We have not yet boosted our posts in a way to target specific people. This is something that we're about to pilot. So that's what I meant by saying it can be highly effective. And if you like, I can send you some stuff so you can see how the boosting works in terms of being able to actually target folks. So on social media, you may have seen a boosted post before by another organization or entity, or even a personal account. Just not ours yet, because we haven't boosted.
I'm just saying I'm a member of the CAC for many years, and I've never seen anything ever on social media from us.
So that means we need to start boosting. So
it does. It really does. It really means we need to do a lot better. So as somebody who follows this is also on Transit Now Tampa, I mean, all of these things. We have all these forums that basically we boost information for you through Transit Now. We boost information through Sunshine Citizens. We boost information through other forums, but I do not see the participation in a way that actually truly reaches the public. And I think this is a really good thing to explore. I still have an issue with the time frame, and I cannot stand behind this for that reason. But
thank you, Nicole. I think we need to move on and take comment. And thank you, Davida, for explaining it. Any other questions or comments about the proposed amendment to the public participation plan. This is an action item, so if I could ask Gail to call the roll, we'll take a vote on the motion to approve the amendment as presented with the additional changes.
Carolyn Brown,
Yes.
White Prindle,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Nicole Rice.
This isn't in regards to the time frame. It's just in regards to adding the additional social media. Is that correct?
We're voting to approve the amendment. Yes or no?
Right, but this is I'm confused on the amendment, so please let's clarify it. Is it in regards to, has nothing to do with the time frame for public comment, it has to do with other ways for outreach on that, is that correct? Is that what this amendment is?
No, I think we're approving the amendment with the timeframes as provided, going from 21 to 14 days.
Okay, no.
And Davida has explained some improvements to the public notification process.
I like your improvements, Davida, but no on the time frame. I'm sorry.
Thank
Alexis
you.
Bobak,
Yes.
Aya Yassin,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Bill Roberts,
No,
Don Skelton, Beatrice Zafra,
Yes.
Cliff Rice,
Yes.
Sharon Gamond, Eric Lamb, are you still on the phone, on the call?
Yes, he is, but I think he's muted. You can, if Sharon is not present, Eric, you can vote in her favor.
Thank you.
You're voting no?
Rick Fernandez,
I'm a no.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
and the motion passes 10-4.
thank you very much. I'm glad we were able to get through that action item today. Terrence, did you have a comment?
Who was the second on the motion?
Beatrice.
Okay.
Beatrice
That
was
was
the second. I had to think for a minute. Yes.
all right. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Prindle.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Given that we're running about 2 hours behind, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn and move these status reports and unfinished business to our next meeting.
I'm willing. Was that a second?
That was a second.
Okay, I'm certainly willing to entertain that motion, but I would ask Mr. Clarendon if he has a brief report on the Boulevard study that we should consider now, or if we should defer it. And I know we have a member has to leave. What's your preference, Rich?
Well, I think given the time and the discussion that would ensue, we probably ought to defer it. I would point out to the committee that number one, you don't have a meeting in July. That's your recess. So your next meeting is August. I believe it's August 4th. So we can certainly take it up then. If you feel like it's urgent or you want to take action sooner than that, we could always not have a recess in July. So I just put that out there for consideration.
That's a good thought. Is there any sentiment amongst the members still on the line or in the room to have a meeting in July, which is our normal recess month? Mr. Trott. I'm sorry, this is part of the discussion on your motion, if you don't mind, Mr. Pringle.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a meeting in July.
Is there anyone in the room that would object to the possibility of calling a special meeting in July to continue some of these items? I don't see anyone objecting. So I'll work that out with Mr. Clarendon and we'll try to find an acceptable date, okay? Our next meeting, regularly scheduled meeting, is August 4th. So we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed?
Enough,
Nikki, you don't get to vote.
enough torture for today. We're done now. We're done with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. This is an important meeting, and I'm glad we were able to get through it and take some action. I appreciate it, and hopefully we will be able to find a date in July to resume some of these important conversations. Thank you, and we are adjourned.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.